Hello and welcome to WGDC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website We Got This Covered. I'm Jonathan Lack.
And I'm Sean Chapman.
And we are here to continue talking about Persona 4, the JRPG sensation.
Seems like it was just a couple of minutes ago that we were talking about this.
Yes. So if you've been listening, this is part 2 of our Persona podcast discussion. If somehow you missed part 1, that was episode 35. You are listening to episode 36 of the podcast. Go back to episode 35. We are putting all these episodes out in one day, Monday, March 4th. You can listen to all of these podcasts about Persona 4. We didn't want to, talk about it for weeks on end. We know we have some listeners who have absolutely no interest in this, even though you should, because it's a really good game. So, if you missed part 1 of this discussion, go back, listen to episode 35, hear all about, we talked about the story of Persona 4, and we talked about a lot of the characters, and we talked about some general overview stuff at the beginning. We're going to finish talking about the characters on this episode, we're going to move on to some gameplay mechanics, music, possibly get out to a third episode, we'll see, we don't know yet because we haven't recorded it.
Yes, well, obviously, because we're talking about it right now.
Yes, so let's move on, Sean. We just finished talking about the investigation team characters.
Yes.
So let's continue where we left off. Now we've got to talk about all of the other social link characters who are not on your investigation team but are still very important. Who do you think is the next one we should go to?
I think let's keep with the other characters that are still really integral to the story. Let's go with let's do Dojima and Nanako. I think that pair.
We're about to get very sad.
Let's talk about Dojima first, and then let's go to Nanako.
Yeah, all right.
Myself up to talking about Nanako.
So Ryotaro Dojima.
Yes, Ryotaro.
Ryotaro, that's what I meant. All right, Ryotaro Dojima, he is your uncle. When you move to Inaba, he is who you live with because, your parents abandoned you or something. They went off.
He doesn't have parents, so just ignore it. Just ignore the parents.
Yeah.
They're not important. You're a transfer student, goddammit.
Yeah. So, you live in Dojima's house. Dojima's a detective. How would you describe Dojima?
I think he's he very much is sort of that, he's a hard-boiled detective. He's sort of the biggest sort of psychological thing that he's got going on is that, his wife died in a traffic accident. Actually, I think it was a hit and run. And so he's been raising Nanako by himself for a couple of years by the time you move in. And obviously he's also a detective, so he's sort of, his job is really important. He's really dedicated to his job. The fact that his wife was killed in a hit-and-run crime, but they couldn't find the guy, sort of really tears him apart. And so a lot of the stuff you deal with Dojima is the fact that he's just kind of never home, because he goes, as soon as you move into town, the crazy murder cases start happening, so he's on the job all the fucking time. So you almost never see Dojima for most of the game. He's out, doing his job and completely neglecting his poor daughter, who just sits there watching the TV all the time. But
this is sort of the key irony of his character, is that he's a very caring man. I think he's
definitely.
He's a very loving man. He's a very thoughtful person, but he just doesn't know how to express himself. It's actually a very basic issue for a lot of characters in Persona 4. Is this sort of gap between, I think, who they want to be and who they are deep down, and what reality, where they are in the real world. And with Dojima, it's that he does obviously want to be a good father to Nanako. He wants to be a good uncle to Narukami.
Yeah.
But he just has trouble doing all that because he's kind of serving a lot of masters in his life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about Dojima's social link, I guess, because it's one that you can only do at night. Yeah. It's sort of just a natural extension of what's going on in the story. It's different than a lot of the other social links with the investigation team where it's following up on something else.
Yeah.
This is running parallel to the story.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious, how far did you get into Dojima's social link in your game?
4 or 5.
Okay, so you didn't really get into the meat of the stuff?
I don't think so. I actually am interested to hear what the meat there is.
So with Dojima, the biggest thing is that you have to sort of help him reconcile the fact that he can't spend all of his time sort of obsessively pursuing the guy who killed his wife, Chisato. That's what you help him come to realize at the end is that he's what's most important that he needs to do is stick with the family he has right now, which is Nanako, and not neglect her all the time like he's been doing throughout the course of the story. And that's a very satisfying story arc to go through, because you also it's sort of that very male bonding kind of thing where you and Dojima both come to have this like really strong sense of mutual respect by the end, where as you learn about what Dojima's going through, you get this sense of like that he is this really good guy, but he just doesn't know how to deal with all the issues in his life right now, and so like helping him sort out with his grief and sort of help him get his priorities straight is really a satisfying experience.
Yeah. So Dojima obviously, is very crucial to the plot, especially as the game moves along. Once Nanako is kidnapped, he's very critical to everything that happens in the game from that to the end, pretty much. He gets in a car wreck, going after her killer, or her kidnapper, and he's in the hospital for a long time. So there's this whole part of the game where no one's home. That's playing this fucking sad song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That part of the game is really depressing when everybody's just in the hospital and you're like, I guess I'll go to school. I don't know. I don't really want to go to school.
I think one of the most interesting things about Dojima is his relationship with Narukami.
Yeah.
Where he's very worried about this kid for good reasons.
Yeah. Like we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but yeah, he's a cop, and so obviously something is going on with Narukami. Like it's like anyone can figure that out, but definitely the dude you're living with, who also happens to be like one of the primary detectives on the police force, he's going to figure out that something's going on. And I like Dojima wants to sort of give you your privacy. Like he knows you're a teenager, you're probably doing some dumb shit. He has no idea the scale of the dumb shit you are doing is, but like he wants to give you some leeway. But then he also sort of can't turn off that detective side of him, so you have a lot of nice little back and forth where he'll start kind of interrogating you, and then Nanako will kind of stop him, and he realizes that it's like he's pushing a bit too hard, until eventually when he realizes that stuff is getting really serious, when you get this threatening letter in the mail, and then that's when he brings you into the police station, and he's like, and part of you wants to feel like, have that very teenagery response of like, man, you're like suffocating me, dude. Like, you're not my real dad kind of thing. But like you do get the sense that Dojima just really cares about you a lot, and he's just trying to help you, and that's what it is. And I like how the game definitely is able to get that across really well, where a lot of times a lot of stuff is not able to.
Very well. I also love that Dojima gives you a lot of money if you do well on tests, and that has to like go into his suspicions, right? That he's giving you all this fucking money, and you always need more. Yeah,
if you get like the top grade on a test, he'll give you like 20,000 yen, which is more than $200. Just like,
if my parents did that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would totally get really good grades on tests if I just got fucking $200 out of nowhere. That would be appreciated.
Maybe that's his strategy.
Instead, for me, for the entire game, I just have to assume that Dojima just thinks that Narukami's doing drugs.
Yeah.
Like, that is the most likely explanation, that he's doing drugs, and that when he does do drugs, sometimes he gets into fights, and that's why he comes home, like, all beat up and stuff, and that's why he's taking a bunch of jobs and is getting all this money, but the money just goes nowhere. It's just gone. When in actuality, he's buying, like, katanas and shit.
And that's the true ending, is that's what this all was. Narukami's drug fantasies were the game.
How great would that be?
Yeah.
It's like, all the other people on the investigation team were all just other people that eventually started just, like, becoming part of your, like, druggy group.
And you wake up, like, after you beat Izanami, you wake up in this rehab center, and, like, Yosuke's next to you, and he's just covered in scars and, like, needle marks, and he's just, like, shaking, and Kanchi's, like, over in the corner, like, trying, like, banging on the door, like, let me out, I need my coke!
And it's like, Yukiko is just, like, stick thin, because she just hasn't been taking care of herself. That'd be really...
Rise and Chie are out on the mean streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad. Dojima just eventually just gives up on you because it's like, I can't deal with this kid anymore.
Yeah. Luckily, that's not what the game is about. That does not happen at the end.
All right, well, we can transition this very easily into talking about Nanako, his daughter, because obviously they're very tied together. Yeah. And Nanako is possibly the saddest character in the history of human fiction.
God, Nanako.
She's at least in the running, right?
Yeah. I mean, she is for me. That's without a doubt. That poor little girl.
Hey, big bro.
Yeah, so Nanako is your cousin, but, like, she effectively is your little sister because you've lived together for an entire year. You get you get really close to her because, again, like, Dojima is never fucking home, and so she is always sitting in front of the TV watching some dumb quiz show or some, like, Super Sentai Power Rangers bullshit.
And when we say always, I want you, the listener, to understand that always, we are not exaggerating.
Yeah.
This is not, we're saying, like, oh, she does it a lot. It's every fucking day. You come home, she says something really, like, depressing, like, I did all the laundry because Dad's not here,
Yeah.
or I made lunch because Dad's not here, or I went grocery shopping because my dad's never here. And then she's like, goes back to watching her show.
Yeah.
And on some nights you can hang out with her, but on most nights she's just so wrapped up in this terrible lifestyle she's leading that that's all she wants is to sit and watch her quiz show.
Yeah, and it's just so depressing because after a certain point in the story, it's when it gets revealed that her mom was killed, and that's sort of like in that whole sequence she starts calling you Big Bro, which is also that's a very Japanese thing. In Japan it would be Nissan. It's like sort of like that's what she just calls you always.
Yeah.
And so it's like past that point in the game, every fucking time you come home, it is welcome home, Big Bro, every fucking time. And so it's just, it breaks your fucking heart because it just, you see, because she is, you know, she's obviously really sort of like lonely and sad inside, but she like puts on this face to sort of like for everybody else that like, you know, she's this very happy little girl that she's always out like, she's also like this weird, it's always kind of weird with her character like pops up in random situations in other people's social links, just sort of, I guess she just wanders around town all the fucking time or something, because she's just like, you know, you're just hanging out with Kanji, all of a sudden Nanako shows up and you give her a little doll or something. But yeah, Nanako was really depressing. Pretty much
every, I mean, it was like, I remember when I started playing the game, I'm like, Sean, this character's so sad, and you're like, yeah, Jonathan, I know, and I'm like, do I ever get to do anything for her? Like, she wants to go to Juness, can't I just take her to Juness? And you're like, eventually, but you're gonna go through some shit before that.
Yeah, and then plus, like, the first time you go to Juness, it's like in one of her social link events, and you come back home, her dad gets really mad at her because you were out, and at you because you were out at, like, 9 o'clock going to, like, the fucking Walmart.
Yeah.
It's just like, God. And, like, you know, her whole social link is sort of, it's, you know, it's very similar to Dojima. It's her having to deal with the fact that Dojima's never home, and you have to sort of help her realize that Dojima does love her, that it's like that Dojima is also, like, they're very interesting social links to sort of do as a pair, because they're both sort of trying to reconcile their relationship with each other, and also how they feel about the fact that her mom and his wife is dead.
Yeah, and I got much further in the Nanako one than I got in the Dojima one, and it's a really good social link.
Yeah. It's
interestingly enough,
depressing.
I know. Interestingly enough, you asked me, like, you were wondering when we were playing the game if, you know, if there was any way, like, do the social links for them, can you start doing them again after they come home in January and February and after all the shit's happened?
Yeah.
You can.
You can?
And that's so weird to me. I did not do it because I'm like, that would feel so wrong continuing those arcs, even though after they're really, that would feel wrong, because they've gone through all this other shit. They would be over that in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's partially it's just because in the original game, since you don't have those January and February months, when Nanako and Dojima get into the hospital, obviously you can't social link with them anymore, so it's all of a sudden like a month out from the end of the game, those social links are just like yanked from you.
Yeah.
So in my original playthrough, I never finished Nanako's social link because, one, hers requires you to have a maxed out expression stat, which takes a while to get to, and then two, it's just like I didn't focus on it because I didn't realize all of a sudden it's like, oh, fuck, I can't work on that one anymore.
Yeah.
Nanako's dead. For a little bit.
Well, anyway, so let's talk about that. Nanako is just, you feel so bad for her. Sometimes you get to do some fun stuff, but you're thinking, like, even before all the plot shit goes down, this is a very sad character.
Yeah.
And then they stab you in the heart by kidnapping Nanako and throwing her into the TV, and she creates the realm of heaven for herself.
Yeah.
And you have to go through that dungeon hearing the saddest fucking song in the game.
Yeah. Heaven, which like the lyrics of that song, it's one of the songs is all in English, and basically the song is all about, it's like basically from Nanako's perspective, like how she's always sitting in front of the TV, how it's, you know, she's always just sort of looking at the door, like hoping that somebody's going to come home, how she's just like that. The reason why she always sings the Juness jingle is because she's just depressed all the fucking time. It is the saddest thing I have ever encountered. It's too much. It's just goddamn.
Yeah, and then even when you rescue her, then you have to do the whole thing where you go to the hospital and she's dying, and this game fucking kicks you in the nuts. And
Yeah.
when I say kicks you in the nuts, I mean they, like, attach, like, a steel boot to their foot and, like, tie you down and kick you repeatedly, because what happens is, like, you have this whole long scene where you're thinking, like, she's fading, something's bad's happening, and it cuts to black and you hear beep, and then it fades back in and she's dead.
Yeah.
For all you know. And she's fucking dead. And it's like, how? Why, game? Like, why would you be that fucking sadistic?
Yeah, and then, like, Dojima runs in right after she dies and, like, collapses to his knees. You see, like, it cuts outside to everybody waiting in the lobby, and everybody's crying. It's just, like, it is the saddest thing I have ever seen in anything ever. It is the most depressing thing I've ever encountered in my entire life, is that fucking thing with Nanako. Because they build... Just the fact that character says, "Welcome home, big bro," every fucking day. You just get so attached to that. So then when that's cut away, when she's in the hospital and, like, that doesn't happen anymore, like, a different song starts playing, you just come home and you're alone and nobody's there, and then eventually she's in the hospital and she fucking dies. It's fucked up.
It's very fucked up.
It's super fucked up.
And I actually think this is one of the most important things about the extra material in the Golden, is that you have January and half of February, and what's so great there is that you get to spend a happy month and a half with Nanako, basically.
Yeah, because she does come back. Like, she does not stay dead.
Yeah. And once those extra months that were not in the original, you do get to spend some time with a happy Nanako, throw this great welcome home party, all this other stuff.
Build a snowman together.
Yeah.
You have
That
your
looks like
kotatsu.
Teddy. Yep. It's really great to finally kind of be rewarded for all your emotional investment in this character beyond beep.
Yeah, because in the original game, it's like you get that. It's like she comes back, but she's still in the hospital. All the fog is around the city. You defeat Adachi, and then it just cuts to you leaving. So it's still super fucking depressing because now you're leaving her. On top of everything else, after she gets out of the fucking hospital, then her big bro leaves town.
Yeah. This game's fucked up.
Yeah, seriously.
So, now, Nanako in battle uses an AK-47. No, I'm kidding.
Nanako was the real killer. She was throwing everybody into TVs the whole time.
And just like a bouncer, she would just, like, pick them up by, like, the trousers and the, like, collar and just chuck them.
Every day is great at Juness, motherfucker.
I think she would just sing the song straight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's Dojima and Nanako. Anything more to say about them?
I don't think so.
All right.
It's too sad. I think it's like, I could see some people looking at Nanako coming back as being a sort of cop-out. It's sort of a very stark contrast to Persona 3, where characters die in Persona 3, and characters do not come back in Persona 3. But I think
that would have been going too far.
Yeah, for the tone of Persona 4, if Nanako had stayed dead, like, you leaving at the end of that game would have been too sad.
A lot of stuff would have been too sad. I mean, what emotional resolution would you get out of all this other stuff beyond... At a certain point, I don't know, it would almost become too much about revenge. Yeah. It would be, all the characters would be in such a dark place because whatever victory you would achieve would be so hollow.
Yeah. And, and you can have that sort of cathartic, where after Nanako dies, you just go into Namatame's room because he's the dude who threw her in the TV and basically caused her to die, and you just fucking chuck his ass in, and bye-bye Namatame.
That's what's...
You sick fucking piece of shit.
And that's what's so brilliant about that part of the game, is that this choice where you can either get the bad ending or the good ending is predicated on your emotions from having just watched Nanako die. So it is perfectly reasonable for you to play that part of the game and not be level-headed enough like the characters.
And it makes sense why a lot of those characters have been pushed to the point where they're seriously considering...
murder.
Yeah. And then plus, it's murder, but they're not, like, stabbing a dude to death.
Yeah.
They're throwing him into a TV, and then, a couple of weeks later, his body's going to show up.
Yeah.
It's not like they're all going to, like, violently beat him to death. But.
Right. But, I mean, it's a very, very well done scene.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's the fucked up part of the game. You want to talk about a happy character?
Sure.
Talk about Fox.
Sure, we can talk about Fox. Kitsune. You said Naoto is your favorite character. Fox is my favorite character in Persona 4.
Really?
Yes. Okay. No, Funky Student is.
Okay.
But, like, of the character, you can't social link with Funky Student, so it's got to be Fox. So
who is Fox? Tell us all about
Fox is... I don't know who or what the fuck is. What the fuck Fox is really. Basically, the Fox is when at a certain point in the game you end up visiting one of the shrine in Inaba, And if you don't know a lot about it, Japanese shrines, like one of the things is there's like this big offertory box where you can throw in some yen and sort of give a prayer, and hopefully the deity of that shrine will either like grant your wish or whatever. And so Fox is this fox living at this shrine, and for whatever reason, Fox wants you to start fulfilling these Imma, which are these little like sort of like wish plaques. They're like when you throw in the offertory thing, you write up your wish on this plaque and sort of like hang it up. And it's like Fox wants you to fulfill these wishes on this plaque, so that people start realizing that there's some like that the deity of the shrine is granting people's wishes, so that they start throwing in more money. Don't know why Fox is such a greedy motherfucker. Because the other part of Fox is that Fox also has access to these magical leaves that restore your SP, which is basically like your mana in the combat sections of the game. And so you want to progress Fox's social link, because as you do that, Fox will put a discount on the price for those leaves when you go into the TV world. And so Fox is this really weird...
He's a great capitalist.
Yeah, exactly. Like Fox is this really weird way of sort of trying to find this way to get you to have this like method of recharging SP when you're in the dungeons, but it doesn't make any sense. Of all the things in Persona, Fox is the weirdest, and that is saying something, because Fox goes the least explained. Like Fox seems to be able to understand human speech.
He hangs out with you. He's very docile. He'll follow you wherever you go. He'll go into the fucking TV with you. I want to see how they got him through Juness into the electronics department and into the TV. Like, did they put a leash on him and pretend he was a dog?
No, Fox snuck the fuck in. Like, if Fox wants to go into the TV, Fox is going to go in the goddamn TV. Nothing's going to stop Fox.
That's true.
I just like, and then Fox also has this great character design where Fox has like these scars, like this like supervillain scar across his eye or her eye that has this like bib with hearts on it.
He looks badass.
Yeah, and then eventually when you max out Fox's social link, all the money that goes to the offertory box is used to make the shrine like basically covers the shrine in the torii in gold. So it's like, and which is great because in Persona 4 the Golden you can visit the shrine whenever you want. In normal Persona 4 it was only to social link with Fox. So when you get all the gold shit, you can never really go see it until the very end of the game. But it's like, but in Persona 4 the Golden, once you get all the it's all pimped out, you can just go visit it whenever. It's like everything's all gold. It's the Golden. But past that, like Fox is like, there's no real story around Fox. Fox is a tool to have you like complete a bunch of quests, just walking around talking to people in the normal world, and then also this way of recovering SP in the TV world. And my favorite character.
Okay.
Yip.
All right. So what psychological issues is Fox dealing with?
Greed.
Okay.
Lots of greed.
I love that he doesn't do anything meaningful with that money he gets. It's just cover it in gold, motherfucker. Pimp it out!
Yeah, when you get to the last day in the game where you walk around and talk to all the people you've maxed out your social links with, you find out that Fox started a family in the shrine and has like these 3 little baby foxes. This is also really great because, the thing when every time you go to the shrine, it's like Fox is up on the roof of the building and like jumps down. It's an awesome thing where it's like Fox jumps down and then it's like, then you see all these like other like these 3 baby foxes that look exactly like just like scaled down versions of the normal Fox model just like land right next to him.
That's great.
Pretty awesome.
Fox is not a character I did much with in my first playthrough. He's definitely one I really want to do the social link of next time, but it's just, as you told everyone on the year-end podcast and told me when I started playing the game, the kind of number one thing you have to do with Persona 4 the first time you play it is be conscious that you can't do everything. Yeah,
that you are restricted by time. Yeah. You're not, unless you're amazing like me, you won't be able to do everything.
Well, and even that's something you had to know the game.
Yeah. Your first playthrough, you couldn't possibly, unless you're using a FAQ.
Yeah.
To max out all the social links.
So I did like 1 or 2 Fox events, but I kind of left him by the wayside just because for like game progression, there were things that were more important for me to finish. Yeah. But on a New Game Plus, where I don't have to worry about some of those things, it would be very fun to do the Fox one.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Fox. What other characters should we talk about?
Let's talk about Margaret and Igor. Let's start talking about the Velvet Room stuff because we haven't talked about that.
Welcome to the Velvet Room.
Yeah. So part of like sort of the mystical side of the game.
Try explaining this.
Okay. So you at the very beginning of the game, where you get your ability of the persona is this sort of mystical thing called the Velvet Room, and there are people living in the Velvet Room, and they're the only one who really knows about it. You're the only one who can visit it, and it's like sort of the master of the Velvet Room is this creepy little dude with a huge ass nose called Igor, and he's the guy who allows you to fuse personas to then make other personas that you can use in combat, and that's sort of his function. And then he's also got this really fucking hot blonde chick with him named Margaret, who she's the one who rules over power, which basically means she has this big-ass book called the Persona Compendium, which has all of your personas in it, and you talk to her to pull out personas you've already made and, like, put them in your stock of personas so you can go use them in the dungeon. That's sort of, like, mechanically how they function in the game. But then also, you can have a social link with Margaret, and that social link is a lot of fun because... One, it's one you can do. It's the only one you can do that's not restricted by time in any way, because what she has you fuse specific personas with like specific abilities. So you have to sort of like help you master the persona fusion system. And so as long as you're high level enough to make the persona she wants, you can do her entire social link in one day. Also, granted, you have enough money to pull all the fucking personas out. Because, for whatever reason, Margaret needs a lot of cash, because she fucking charges you a lot of money to pull out personas. But so...
Who knows? There's a lot of liquor in the Velvet Room. They've got a very good bar. I imagine, Narukami learns about alcohol in the Velvet Room.
Yeah. It's exposed to a lot of things in the Velvet Room.
Yes.
With Margaret. But it's fun just because as you go through making all the personas for Margaret, she, like, her character, her and Igor are not particularly well defined. Like, this game, like, specifically does not make any bones about trying to explain what the fuck Igor and Margaret are. Like, that stuff is explained in the earlier Persona games. They're, like, basically servants of the god that gives you Persona powers. So, like, if you know the history of the Persona stuff, them being there makes a lot of sense. But if you don't, they're just kind of there. The Velvet Room's just there. Igor's just there. There's this hot chick named Margaret. We have no idea who these people are, why they exist, or anything about that.
That's actually something I kind of love about the Velvet Room in Persona 4 is it's this part that just kind of you accept.
Yeah, it's just there. And that Margaret, as you fuse personas for Margaret, you sort of start peeling back the layers of her character, and you find out, like, while she has this very sort of, like, proper attitude towards you, She actually has this really dumb sense of humor, and she makes a lot of really dumb jokes that are really funny. And,
all right.
And then also, if you max out her social links, she kisses you on the last day, like she's standing outside the Velvet Room.
Nice.
And it's not an awe thing; it's like more of an ooh thing. It's kind of sexually charged in a really kind of weird way because she's not human. She's been alive for like 2,000 years. She's created by Igor. That'd be really weird.
Does she bring you back to the Velvet Room and have Igor like go sit in the corner while you two like?
Igor, close your eyes.
Yeah. Okay.
As you wish.
Anyway, so while we're talking about the Velvet Room, do you want to talk about Marie or do her later?
Let's do Marie later.
Okay. So let's keep going. What are some other side characters to talk about?
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Let's just like roll down the list of my social links that I've got.
Okay.
Because it'd be too hard to try to organize the characters by importance at this point.
We can talk about all the school people now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that. So, first, we'll go with the clubs. So you can, at a certain point in the game, you can join both a sports club and a culture club. And for the sports club, you can either join the basketball team, where your social link is specifically with a guy named Ko, who nobody likes. Shit. Yeah, nobody likes Ko. Or if you join the soccer club and you're smart like me, then you get a social link with Daisuke, who's a dude who always has a Band-Aid on his nose and is a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, just a fun dude.
Yeah, but Ko and Daisuke are also friends, so they show up in each other's social links, but they are both distinct social links. And I did do Ko's in my original playthrough and Daisuke on this one, so I've seen both of them.
Yeah. So I did Ko, but I didn't finish it because Ko's social link kind of sucks.
Yeah, Ko he's, like, Ko's thing is that he's part of the Ichijo family, where he was adopted by this very, like, sort of well-to-do Japanese family with a lot of history, and he feels like there's all this pressure on him, even though his family isn't actually putting pressure on him. His family, like, loves him like they're just his son, and, like, basically Ko is, like, has, like, dealing with all these issues that he's just made for himself in his own head, and it's really obvious that that's the case about, like, by the sixth social link with him. You're just like, come on, Ko. Fucking just sit down and talk to your parents. Like, that is literally all that has to happen here, is you just talk to your parents for, like, 2 fucking seconds, and you'll realize you're just being a fucking idiot. So yeah, nobody likes Ko.
No.
So if you're playing Persona 4, don't do the Ko social link. Just go for Daisuke.
Yeah, Daisuke's a fun dude.
Yeah, I mean Daisuke doesn't even have like a lot of issues. Like his biggest issue is that he doesn't like hanging out with girls that much because he got dumped by his girlfriend in middle school. That's like it.
All right, well,
that you just kind of hang out with them.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, and I like the Ko and Daisuke social links just because I think they capture that sense of like your friends on like a sports team thing. They do that really well, particularly with Daisuke.
All right, but if you do a culture club, then you have two options. You have the drama club or the music club. We'll start with the music club because that's the one both of us are familiar with. And that's,
well, I did the drama club in my first playthrough, so I've done both of them.
I know, but I was saying I'm not familiar with it, so both of us are not familiar with that one.
Okay. Well, I was also indicating that I am familiar with the other one.
That's why we'll talk about it next.
Okay.
Fuck's sake, Sean.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Just talk about INA, goddammit.
Okay. INA.
Your weird issues with INA. You're not a very understanding boyfriend towards her.
What do you mean?
It's from what the conversations I've had with you.
Okay, INA is kind of an interesting character because she's got kind of a nice social link. It's pleasant. It's got some interesting things. But it would be good for 3 or 4 events. Stretching it out to 10, they have to stretch it the fuck out. It has
one in particular, I think it's her 8th or 9th one, is literally like 2 lines of dialogue. And then you're just like, you hang out with INA.
Yeah. And INA basically, it's just, she's a young girl, she's shy, and she is insecure about her trombone abilities or trumpet. What does she play?
I think it's trombone.
Yeah, okay. You play the trumpet, and then she plays the trombone. That's correct. So anyway.
You also play the bass.
Yeah. So anyway, so you go to music club with her, and you just kind of encourage her, and then she's supposed to do this big performance, and because the other trombone player is sick, and she works really hard for it, but then he gets well again, and she doesn't get to do it, and then she decides she's going to go study abroad and learn music, and that's basically her whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's just... My main thing with INA is she's a fairly dull character. There's just not a lot to her. But if you pick that club, the music club, they kind of shove INA down your throat for a lot of the game in just different areas.
Well, they do that with the other girl as well.
Yeah.
Like they do that with basically all the school characters.
Yeah. But as I hear, that other character's more interesting.
I wouldn't necessarily say... I mean, I like INA a lot, too.
Okay.
I mean, I think most of the non-main character social links tend to be a little bit stretched. I think INA's is sort of the most extreme of that, where there are like 1 or 2 social link events that are just like nothings. But, I like INA okay.
I like INA okay, yeah. And I think it's... The one thing that's kind of weird is because, yes, she is technically a 15-year-old first year.
She's 1 year younger than you.
She's the way she is drawn, she looks the same age, if not slightly younger than Nanako. And that's just a little creepy. And she's voiced to sound very, very, very young. She doesn't sound mature in the way Rise or Naoto or some of the other first-year girls do.
Yeah, no, so. she sounds like a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah. So, when you take her back to your room and fuck her at Christmas, you feel like that's something wrong about that.
She is 1 year younger than your character. You're a really poor boyfriend towards INA. I feel bad for her.
I have like 7 other girlfriends. I don't need her.
But yeah, so that's INA. The other one is a girl named Yumi Ozawa. She's in the Actors Club, and hers is really fucking depressing because basically hers is that when she was a little kid, her dad just sort of like walked out on her family, like didn't really say anything. He just sort of left. So she grew up most of her life really hating her father, and then all of a sudden, like your third social link event or whatever. Her father is in the hospital with like some sort of terminal illness, and so her mother now is all of a sudden spending a lot of time with her dad in the hospital, and Yumi's now is like thrust in a situation where she has to reconcile her feelings where she grew up sort of hating her dad because her dad left her, but obviously she still loves her dad because fucking he's her dad, and so it's like... And so basically 90% of that entire social link is spent with you and her in the fucking like lobby of the hospital, and she's just crying. And so... Like, it's a more, I guess, dramatically interesting social link than INA, but it's also sort of one that's also really exhausting because it takes a really long time. Like, it doesn't move anywhere. Like it gets to, once you get to the third social link event, it sort of sets up that, and then it doesn't really move anywhere with that other than just be like, this is so depressing, this is so depressing, this is so depressing, until like the very end where you're like, you're my girlfriend now. This is a little bit less depressing.
Yeah.
But... Yeah, it's like neither of the cultural club ones are really like sort of compelling social links, but they're both sort of fun. It's just like you could just like either add a girl to your like line of fucking girlfriends you can develop.
Your harem.
Yeah.
So another girlfriend you can get at school, I think that's all the clubs, would be Ebihara. She winds up being the manager of your sports club.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of how you're introduced to her. But then you can do a social link with her. And she's this is another character who is a very stereotypical Japanese anime character. This is one you see in just about everything, which is sort of the stuck-up
the Ojo-sama, the prince.
Yeah.
And the princess, I should say.
But again, with Ebihara, they do a really good job fleshing that out, and it's a really fun... I think it's a really good social link.
Yeah, I like hers a lot, too. She's also one where if you want to romance that character, you have to tread some light water there. Yeah. It's a little tricky. But yeah, like, basically... Her whole social link actually develops in an interesting direction where it starts off with just you and her hanging out, and
she's kind of using you.
Yeah. You're basically her pack mule while she's shopping. But you sort of develop a friendship, and she kind of comes to trust you. And then the most interesting thing that happens at first is that she confesses that she has a crush on whoever your sports team dude is. So in my case, it was Daisuke, and then that's where it can sort of branch off, where either you become friends with her if you decide to get into this like really casual relationship with her after like kind of Daisuke turns her down, or you can stay friends with her at first and then she'll sort of come around to you by the end. And that sort of branch is really interesting because that's another one where I actually ended up seeing both, because this is one I completed in my first playthrough as well. And that time I didn't go down the romance path. And that one's interesting when you don't romance her, because it's actually really fucking depressing. Because what ends up coming about is that I does realize she has feelings for your character, but she's so insecure about herself at that point, and sort of because she ends up sort of dumping you and then realizing she has feelings for you after your like really casual fling, that like then she like is so insecure that she feels like she can't be in a relationship with you anymore. Like even though she's like realized she has feelings for you, and that's like it's actually like the most dark and sort of depressing way to end one of those social links, because it's not necessarily this really bright note like you're in this.
Yeah.
You have sort of maneuvered yourselves in a position where you can't be together even though you want to be together kind of thing.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's really, really fucking sad.
That's too bad. But I like Ebihara. I think actually this is one of those where I don't think her events feel stretched. I actually think every scene with her is really good. And after, Ko or Daisuke turns her down, she has some really neat introspective scenes where you see that I don't think she was ever unaware of who she is.
Yeah.
But she's sort of, her repression is not unconscious or subconscious. It's very conscious repression, and it's a really interesting character to play with.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, who else have we got from school? Anyone else?
We've got Saki's brother, but did you even ever start that social link?
Can I just see what he looks like? I've never seen him. Yeah, all right.
Well, you had to have seen him,
because
he's introduced through the story. But yeah, you've got Naoki Konishi. This is one you didn't do. I won't dwell on it that long, but it's basically Saki was the girl that got murdered at the beginning of the game, and so he's her younger brother. This is a really good social link. It's one that takes a while to kick off, but it's kind of obvious. Like you kind of help him come to terms with his grief over his sister dying, and it's just one. It deals with like the actual reality of like what it's like. Living like a few months after someone you really care about has passed away. It deals with that in a very like mature way.
Yeah,
and I really like it. It just takes. I don't know. It's just Naoki just doesn't seem like the kind of dude you just want to hang out with. Like he's just Even looking at him now,
he looks like kind of a douche.
Yeah. He is kind of a douche. But yeah, that one.
He's going through some shit though.
Yeah. So there's Konishi exists. I feel like he is the one. Like, I don't think almost anyone ever does that social link. Like, it's just
I didn't even know. I don't have any idea how you even trigger it.
Like, about a couple of months into the game, you end up in, like, the health club. Moroka forces you to be there, and that's where he's introduced. And then after that, you have to talk to him about 3 times. He's in the first floor of the education building, like, standing by a window. And you have to talk to him, like, 3 times before the social link actually triggers.
Yeah, it's not the easiest one to start.
Yeah, that was kind of a pain in the ass, because you have to waste 3 days on it before you actually get the social link started.
Yeah. All right. So that's everyone at school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to talk about Funky Student?
We'll talk about the miscellaneous characters later.
I'm just joking. All right.
We'll do the whole section on Funky Student.
What other social links have we got?
Let's do the old lady. Let's do Hisano.
Okay, Hisano is, I think, one of my 4 or 5 favorite social links in the game.
Yeah, I really like hers.
It is incredibly well written. That's the main thing, is that her events tend to be very short and to the point, and they're not voiced, but the dialogue is just incredibly well written. And I have to think whoever wrote it in its Japanese originally did a great job, but then the translating is fantastic. And it's, I don't know, just this idea of someone who has lost, but at a very old age, not a young age, and lost someone who was there for her entire life, and is, it's not someone you have any sort of direct connection to. It's just this old lady you meet at the hospital.
Yeah.
But she's really interesting, and I think her 7th social link event, which is the last one I was able to do, you bring her some letters from her dead husband that you found at the Daidara shop, the antique store. And it just triggers this sort of flood of memory. She keeps saying throughout the social link that she is deaf, and when you finally realize what she means by that, it's a really powerful scene. Yeah. And it's probably, to me, it's the most powerful non-voiced scene in the game.
Yeah. This is one that I did not do the social link in my original playthrough, because it's one in the game you can only do it on Sundays, and I never just really bothered with it. But yeah, it's definitely when you come to realize, her husband had Alzheimer's, so like as he was passing away, like he had lost most of his memories of her and their time together, and like her sort of like talking you through her frustration at that. It's a really affecting social link.
Yeah, it's a very honest one. It's a very authentic one. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, so I watched him go through that. So I don't know. I have a connection to that, but it's a very good social link.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start doing the job social links.
Okay.
Let's do Young Mother. How far did you get with the Young Mother social link?
Pretty far. It's 5, 6, 7.
Okay, yeah. So
where she's getting really frustrated.
Did you get to the point where she has like that one where she starts talking to you about how she like was watching some like basically like a really creepy self-help video where it's like we're kind of like completely deluding yourself?
No, I did not see that one.
It's the Young Mother social link is basically, I talked about this one on the Year In podcast. This is one of my favorite ones because it's you basically, as you're working at this daycare, you sort of befriend the mother of one of the kids there, Yuta, and Eri, the mom. She's his stepmother, and she's just become his stepmother in like the past couple of months. And when she moved to Inaba with her husband in Utah, her husband like went, I think he's in like China or something on some job, like right away. So all of a sudden she is thrust into this situation where she has she knows nobody in this town. She's been like ripped away from her past life. She's just started this new life, but like the key component of that new life, like the man she loves, is suddenly gone and stuck her with this kid who she just met like a couple of months ago. And so she has like nothing in her life. And it's one of the things I find most interesting about it is just that like one, in this situation, normally you would be taking, I feel, the kid's perspective on this and, like, dealing with, like, the kid has to, like, deal with this, like, evil stepmom and his dad is never at home kind of thing.
I've never seen it from the other side.
Yeah, but this, you watch it from the stepmom's point of view where she has to live with this kid where she doesn't know the kid. She's supposed to act like a mother towards him. And it's like the most awkward, depressing situation. It's just to me, like, for me, like, that situation just seems so completely terrifying.
Yeah, it's really hard to fathom. It's one of the saddest things in the game. And what I think is great is they really don't pull any punches in depicting it. It's like, they don't dumb it down, and they really show what this character is going through.
Yeah, like I said, like, there's this point about halfway through where you have this conversation with her where it's like, it's actually kind of, it's really creepy because she starts talking about how she's been turning to all this stuff about how, like, if you just, like, believe in something, it'll come true and kind of stuff. And it's like this very, what I view as this very sort of, like, self-delusional form of self-help books or, like, seminars and that kind of thing.
Like The Secret in America.
Yeah, that she, like, sort of, like, latches onto that and sort of, like, wants that to sort of make her life perfect when it's, like, that's not going to help you at all. And it's, and it's one of the most satisfying social links to finish. Because it's like, by the end of it, you help these two people come together and sort of, to help them love each other by the end. It's like a mother and a son. Yeah. And that is really fucking satisfying when that happens. Yeah. Because going through that social link is really kind of depressing.
Yeah, this is one I was really sad I couldn't finish. It's just one where it's, the way it's timed, you can do it 3 days out of the week. But, like the other social links, you can't, it's not that every time you go it advances. you have to like do extra times with her, and it's just I always found myself doing other stuff or forgetting it was there, and I feel a little bad about that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of the reasons I want to do a New Game Plus sometime so I can finish that social link.
Yeah, I really like the young mother one. The next job one is Sayako, the nurse, social link.
The pedophile?
Yeah, basically. Okay. Yeah, so at one point in the game, you can start working at a hospital. That's where you meet Hisano, the old lady social link. And working at that hospital is this woman named Sayako, who is a very, very flirtatious woman.
Yes, let's put it that way.
Yeah, you are this 16-year-old boy working at the hospital, just basically like mopping it up as a janitor at nights. And she will just to progress the social link, she'll just sort of like drag you into a hospital room. And there's one scene in particular that pretty strongly suggests that something kind of sexual went down. Like, she's very flirtatious with you for the first section of the social link, but there's one that's like really heavily implies that something happened that's kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. But then she kind of goes crazy.
Yeah.
And then she realizes she wants to go help people in other ways and leaves.
Yeah, I mean, basically what happens with her is that she's been using you, like flirting with you to sort of distract herself from thinking too hard about her job, because she had this whole thing where she was in a relationship with a doctor in her past hospital who was married, but she didn't realize that, and so like there's this whole scandal. She like had to lose her job, and after she lost her job, at that hospital she found out that one of the patients that she was really sort of friendly with at that hospital passed away. This like little kid, and she's like, that's kind of what sets her off as being really fucking crazy, is then she starts taking her job super fucking seriously in a way that's really not healthy for her. And so it's a fun social link where you sort of have to help her come to terms with, like, you need to sort of get a handle, first of all, on, it's like, it's really great that you're a nurse, but being a nurse and then working yourself literally to death, not a great idea.
Yeah.
And then you sort of help her realize she wants to go out and help people, and then eventually she goes to Africa and helps and becomes a nurse over there.
Yeah. That's a cool. And then the ways you get to talk to her in different parts of the game after all that, like when you have to catch up with all your social link characters, is you go hear about her from other characters. Yeah. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I like Sayako a lot. I find like her character very interesting because it moves. It starts out as this like really kind of creepy, flirtatious thing, and then it very quickly moves into this very different direction that you wouldn't really expect.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy one to finish because the hospital, while there are parts where it's tough to progress hers, you can just go work at the hospital and you get other stuff out of it. Courage and money.
Yeah. And so then the other one, I don't even think, did you even do the tutor job at all?
Nope.
Okay, there's another social link that's the other job one that you can work at night where you tutor this kid, Shu, and...
Punk.
Yeah,
just kidding.
He's basically, his thing is that he's really nerdy and he doesn't have any friends at school.
Well, let's cry me a fucking river.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah, he's got the coolest fucking tutor in the world.
Yeah.
Fucking deal with it, dude.
I'll teach you how to get 8 different women Shu.
And there's like this really weird scene where it's either the 9 or 10 scene with Shu. I think it's the 9 scene where it's his birthday, and but like nobody is at home, like nobody's helping celebrate his birthday. So to help celebrate his birthday, you call all of your friends. So like all the investigation team shows up at his house, which is almost even more depressing.
Yeah.
Where it's just like now all of a sudden all these people he doesn't know is there celebrating his birthday because his tutor called them. Like that's, I don't know. That's
weird.
Yeah, that's just, to me that would make me even more depressed because it's like all of a sudden it's like here are these 8 people I don't know who all pity me because I don't have any friends kind of thing. There's a really weird social link event. But yeah, the Shu one is not. Yeah, I don't care that much about him. But then now we get to move into the
extra social links.
The 2 new social links that were introduced in the Golden, which I think are both very interesting. Let's talk about the Adachi one first.
Because the most significant one is the last one we'll do.
Yeah. So Adachi, as we said before, he is for reals. He's the culprit.
Yeah.
Other than Izanami, who's for reals. He's the culprit.
Yeah.
He's the dude who killed the 2 women at the beginning of the game. But obviously you don't find that out until the end of the game. So he spends the first section of the game sort of popping in and out of the story, feeding you information, basically being a klutz, trying to sort of like to help you along to catch Nabatame, but keep you out of figuring out that, this Adachi dude, there's something fishy going on with him. And so it's really interesting that they then introduced this Adachi social link exclusively for the Golden Edition, because it's the fucking killer. Like, you start the social link with the killer, and I was really perplexed at trying to figure out how they were going to do that before I actually played the golden version. But it's really interesting because you can only, through normal social link events, bring his social link up to level 6, and then past that point, it's just entirely through story events. But it's really interesting because in the original game, you don't spend that much time with Adachi in this sort of like really casual setting, I guess. And you also don't spend a lot of time with him sort of personally after he's sort of come out as being like, hey, I am a crazy motherfucker and I have killed 2 bitches, is basically how he puts it. And so for the first section of his social link, it's all you're hanging out with him. And I think it's really subtle what they do, where what you figure out through it is that Adachi, the biggest thing with Adachi is that he's just lonely. Like, he has, it's almost kind of similar with the young mother thing, where he moved to this town. He knows nobody in this town. He did not move to this town because he wanted to. He's just like, this is just where he could get a job as a detective, so he had to move here. And so he knows nobody in this town. He's really lonely. He feels like, because he is a really smart guy, he feels like he should be deserving of a higher position. And that's all stuff you do find out in the original game, but they sort of expand on it here. And one of the things I love that they do is that there's this old woman who you meet through his social link who calls him Toru, who is very sort of very friendly with Adachi, spends a lot of time with him, just because his first name Toru is the same as that woman's son's name. And so she's just sort of is spending time with him. And I really like the last social link event you can do with him before it goes on to the sort of the story path where it reveals that he's the killer and everything, is basically that woman walks out of the Junes elevator. Adachi sort of puts on this act of oh no, she's here, I'm going to try to hide, I hope she doesn't come talk to me because this woman is so annoying. And then her actual son walks out and they sort of talk together, and then she walks up and talks to Toru, starts talking, sort of bragging about her son to him, to Adachi, and then they walk out. And they don't sort of really throw it in your face that really affects Adachi, that Adachi's really depressed that this woman isn't latched onto him anymore, but that is clearly the case. They keep it sort of in the background, nobody just tells you that. You can really tell that that really affects him, and I think that's a really powerful moment to me, at least.
And then what's some of the other stuff, once you start getting the story events, you can, if you did the social link right, you can do some crazy shit with Adachi at the end of this game.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is his 8th one, where I think the one thing that, at least for me, knowing what I know about Persona, with having the Adachi social link really tips you off to the fact that he's a killer, is that he's the killer, is that his arcana for the social link is the Jester Arcana, which is... don't need to go that much into tarot stuff, but it's another form of what is your Arcana, the Fool Arcana, which is basically 0, and that represents the wild card abilities, which is what makes you so special. That's why he can use multiple personas and all that kind of stuff. And so having him have another Arcana that is the 0 Arcana sort of indicates to me that he's one of the other motherfuckers that already has the ability to enter the TV at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. But then they play with that, where when you... After he comes out as the killer, you can go into the TV and confront him alone, personally, and during that event, which is a fucking amazing social link event, he reveals, or he sort of talks to you, he taunts you, he sort of is telling you, come get me, I'm the killer, this is what he's trying to do, go get your friends, come after me. He fucking points a gun at you, he shoots the gun, and there's this great shot where he shoots the gun, it sort of goes white, and it zooms in on Narukami's face and hits the window right next to him, that kind of thing. But then after that, at the end of that social link, when when your social link levels up, it transforms the Arcana from the Jester into the Hunger Arcana. And that's not anything that the Persona games have ever done before, where once the true nature of your relationship with this person is revealed, it's sort of your social link sort of becomes corrupted in a way. Then it's also really interesting because then when you get to the max social link with him, and you can make the ultimate persona Magatsu Izanagi, which is Adachi's persona, there's this really interesting sort of sense that that you can have these social links with people even if you're not friends with them or you're not amiable with them, that you can have this sort of negative social link that you can still use.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I did not one of the reasons I definitely want to play New Game Plus is to do the Adachi one, because it's a very logistically tough social link to do.
Yeah. He
And
shows up on... He does not have a schedule like the other characters do. Like, he just shows up on random days, and he also alternates on whether or not you can social link with him during the day or at night.
yeah, so that was a little weird, and I did one or two, but I really don't remember them, just because so much other stuff was going on in the game, and when you started, I had no conception that he might be the killer.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking much of it. I was just like, well, Adachi's kind of a fun guy, but, I definitely want to go through it again, because I just want to get those last couple that you do once you find out he's the killer. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah. So the final one we're going to talk about here, final major character social link, is Marie, and Marie is far and away the biggest addition to Persona 4 Golden, because not only is she a major new character, not like Adachi's a new social link, but he was there always. She's not just a new character with a new social link, and a fairly substantial social link at that. She's also hugely important to the plot, and I think if you were, if like me, you started with Golden, it's really tough to imagine the game without her.
Yeah, yeah.
So Marie is this girl. She lives in the Velvet Room. They just sit her right next to Igor.
Yeah, stuff her in the corner.
Yeah. And Marie, she's very depressed. She's very, snarky.
Yeah.
And she says stuff like, "Stupid, I hate you, jerk face."
Yeah.
It's really, really funny. She's very endearing, though, in that way. But anyway, she has no memories. That's sort of her thing, is that she just kind of appeared here one day. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know where she came from. And her social link is you just trying to kind of help her find her memories or hang out with her, just try to get her to open up. And it is maybe the best social link in the game.
I think it is.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd say it's the best one.
I think that is definitely, sometimes it just comes down to personal preference. Like the Naoto one is super fun because you can do the detective work and stuff. But the Marie one is really, really good. It's just every event is fantastic. And once it takes the turn about midway through and you start trying to find her memories, it just reaches this level that I think is really intelligent, where, instead of her finding her memories or becoming really depressed about not getting her memories, her 9th level social link, which is probably the best social link event in the game, it's just a great scene, is her realizing that she doesn't need to do either of those. She can just realize that a memory, she's already forging new ones.
That she can just live her life. She doesn't have to sort of be attached to who she used to be.
I think that's this concept of a character without memory is not something Persona 4 invented, but that level of mature closure there is really unique.
And the way they execute on it is really clever as well.
Yeah.
Where that's one of the few sections of the game where I just felt like they had these dialogue options that were really, really smart. Where you're sort of you're helping. You have a lot of dialogue options where you sort of can help Marie figure out what she's going through in a way that where you're not just telling her, you're making memories right now. You're just, it's like she brings up something about the eating at the steak place, and you just say, "Oh, you remember that?" And she's like, "Of course I remember that. You fucking eat it." Oh. And there's a couple of moments like that in that social link event that I think are really, really clever. Yeah, it's a really great scene. She's just a very, very good character. Another one of my favorite vocal performances in the game. That actress is fantastic. And she's just a really great character, all before you get into all the stuff in January and February where she becomes crucial to the plot. Yeah. In January she sort of disappears, and you have no idea what the fuck happened to her, so you have... And this only happens if you max out your social link with her, too. Yeah. So after she disappears, you have Margaret goes off, trying to figure out, hey, what the fuck happened to Marie? And then eventually you find out, she's in the TV world in this place called the Hollow Forest, is basically the name for the TV world, and that she's, trapped herself in this dungeon, and you have to go in and go after her. And so that's one of the other more substantial additions of the game, is that they put in this whole new dungeon, the Hollow Forest, right there for Marie. And that whole section I find is really interesting because, ignoring, the actual mechanics of the dungeon itself, once you get to the end and finding out, one, that Marie is contemplating suicide because, to try to save the world, because, she has been subsumed by the fog, and that if she destroys herself, she'll destroy the fog as well. But then also, I think if you've chosen to develop a romantic relationship with Marie, I think that section is really, really affecting, where, one, you have to fight Marie in order to save her, and that's really smart, because the boss fight with Marie as just basically Marie, before she transforms into a big monster, you kind of have to just keep on. She casts a spell where she will reflect anything that hits her, and you just basically just keep on attacking her, hurting yourself until she just relents. Because she just doesn't, she loves you. She doesn't want you to just see you hurting yourself over and over and over again trying to save her.
Yeah.
I think that's using the game mechanics of the battle system in a really, really clever way to sort of deliver a story point.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, Marie is sort of like, if there's one canonical love interest in this game, in Golden, that's kind of who she is.
It's definitely Marie. Yeah, if you had to pick one, it'd be her.
Yeah. I mean, they even imply in the sort of epilogue scene that that's who Narukami is most in love with. And in many ways, that's actually who I would pick out of all the characters. I think that...
Yeah, that's, at least from... It's just like looking at it from a story point of view, it would have to be Marie.
Yeah. So she's just a really great character. And the way she plays into all the stuff in January and February adds this really, I think, very critical connecting point between, fighting Adachi and fighting Izanami.
Yeah.
And I, as I said before, I can't imagine playing the game without that middle connecting section there where she kind of smooths over a lot of plot stuff by just having her there and being present.
Yeah, I definitely felt in the original game it is a pretty awkward transition where at the end of December you just cut to March.
Yeah.
You just skip through all of that stuff. Yeah, they definitely give you this like little bit of denouement where you can just hang out with people during January and like let you breathe a little bit in that sense. And Marie is definitely really crucial to that part of the game.
Yeah.
Then also she... when you find out what she is, I think it helps sort of illuminate a part of the game that did not make a whole lot of sense, which is Izanami herself is not particularly well explained why Izanami is sort of crazy, like what exactly Izanami is, where she comes from, and having Marie be this other side of her that sort of Izanami that sort of splits off, sort of the beneficent side, I guess you can think of her as. I think that helps. That makes the ending of the game make a lot more sense than just having Izanami come the fuck out of nowhere. Having it be sort of set up through Marie really helps that ending make a lot more sense.
It works
be
very,
a lot
very
more
well.
natural.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's Marie. Anything else to say about her? I really like her design. I think she's a very visually appealing character.
Yeah, and I like how it's like her and Naoto should have a blue hat party because they both have those blue hats that they wear all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And then you realize that those characters are really fucking attractive when they don't have their hats on.
Yeah. All right, so those are all the characters in the game. We're going to talk just briefly about some of the side characters you meet along the way.
Yeah, so one of the things I really like about the Persona games is you have all these other characters that are not, like you basically know they're a side character if they don't have a little, like, anime portrait thing that comes up when you talk to them. And you also know they're a side character when they don't have a name. And I love these little characters that you can just run up and talk to who have different bits of dialogue, like every week or 2 weeks in the game, that just like you kind of become attached to their own really dumb little personal stories. Like one of them is Funky Student, who I talked about before, who he's your senpai, he's a third-year student, and he's the black kid on just like hangs out at the third floor. He's got this huge-ass fucking afro, and you go talk to him, and he will give you what he calls our riddles, or no way riddles, but like they're these little kind of, I guess, word puzzles in a sense, that if you answer them, he'll give you stuff. And there's just something about there's just something about Funky Student that I love.
The way they write him is brilliant.
Yeah. Funky Student's an articulate motherfucker. You know, he is not just some sort of like thug or something. Like that dude knows what he's talking about. He's a smart dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's
Funky Student, there's Spacey Girl, who's this like little elementary school girl who you can just like encounter in the shopping district, who just says crazy shit all the time. Like you just ask Spacey Girl, what are you doing? I'm counting all the petals. Why are you doing that? Because if I don't do it, who will? All right, Spacey Girl. See you in a couple of weeks when you say something else that's really crazy. There's the girl in your school standing outside the library who's just in love with the kid in the library.
Yeah, this is the girl who stands outside of the library pining after her senpai, as I refer to her. Yeah, I like her. Like her relationship with her senpai sort of develops over the course of just like going and talking to her. I like that character. There's Errand Boy, who by the end, Errand Boy and Spacey Girl become friends. I like that one.
I like that too.
There's like the old dude who's just like with a really crotchety old dude who always stands outside the shrine. Like I just like all these random little people that you can talk to all the time and sort of see. It's like, yo, I have no idea who the fuck I am never going to bother to learn your name, Spacey Girl, but I want to see what's going on with you now.
It's pretty great. So, does that kind of wrap up our character discussion?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. A lot of characters to go through, but I think we did well.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we've been so far talking about Persona 4 just as the story,
Yeah.
as the characters, but this is a game.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really fun game to play, and I don't know if we've conveyed exactly why this game is fun, because I think if you just listen to this podcast as we've talked about it so far without just playing the game, A, you would be completely confused.
Yeah.
But B, you would think this is just you boot up your Vita and you sit there and watch.
Yeah.
But that's not what Persona 4 is at all. It's definitely a game that is story heavy, cutscene heavy, but it
is an
always
RPG.
Yeah, but it always feels interactive.
Yeah.
And so let's describe the basic gameplay breakdown.
Okay. Let's see if we can do that, because this is, mechanically speaking, this game is immensely complex. There's a lot of different systems going on.
The most basic thing you should understand is that it is all predicated around this basic time management system where it's day to day, March to March in this one year, 2012.
Yeah.
And you every day you have it split into multiple periods. You have the morning, the school,
lunchtime, after school, evening.
Yeah. And in the original game, you could only do stuff in your house at the evening, but now there's all this other stuff out, and even you can go outside and do sort of in-between social links and all this other stuff. But sort of everything happens within that frame of you have this time management system.
Yeah. So you are literally restricted by the game from doing everything, which is very different than how most games are designed. If you play Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2, you will get to a certain point in the game where it's like, if I go one more story mission, I will finish this game, but if I don't have to do it, I can just sit here and do everything, all the side stuff in this game right now if I wanted to. In Persona, you have to sort of plan out how you're going to do it to a certain extent. I think part of the trap of the game is that certain types of people would be compelled to try to plan out too much and sort of look too far ahead, and that will kill you in this game. That's just too much to try to keep in mind at once. But you have to be conscious of not wasting time. You want to, especially when you know how important each day is, you want to make each day as valuable as possible. And the sort of, since I played Persona 4 and Persona 3, by the time I got to the Golden, I was kind of weirdly obsessive about that, to the point where I finished, without even deliberately attempting to, I did not set out to try to get all of my social links maxed out particularly, because I didn't think it would really be possible on a first playthrough. I ended up doing it just because every fucking day was important. Everything has to be perfect. And that's it's a really nice sort of risk and reward system of trying to figure out what you want to prioritize, when you want to prioritize it, to be able to get what you want when you want it. Yeah. And so you always have, a dozen different things you could spend a day doing. You could go work at a job. You could work on any of 5 or 6 different social links. You could go try to work up one of your social stats that then unlock access to other social links down the line. You can study to get knowledge up and stuff like that. Or you can decide to go fish if you want to go fish.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that part of the game is sort of your day-to-day stuff is really compelling and serves as a nice way to sort of pace out the game and keep you always doing something new.
Yeah. So, now within that, there are sort of 2 halves to how you play the game.
Yeah.
And there's the TV world, which is where you run dungeons.
Yeah, where you have the sort of traditional JRPG combat. If you cut out the day-to-day stuff and all the social link stuff, that's what a normal JRPG would be for this game. If you just cut out those elements and you just had the combat.
Yeah. But the combat side is very informed by the other day-to-day side, real-world side, because you have to save people, and basically you have to run and finish each dungeon before multiple days of rain set in. And so you always...
When the fog comes in, and when the fog comes in, someone's going to die.
Yeah,
so you have a time limit.
Yep, you have an access to the weather forecast. You know what each day is going to bring. So, let's say you usually have about a month to save people. You can either do it, you can be a total badass and go in the first day you have and just, blow through the dungeon.
Wreck shit and kill everything like I did.
Yeah.
Just every dungeon, one day. 2 days on a dungeon, you're wasting time, motherfucker.
Yeah. So do all that, get through the dungeon, and this is sort of how you're encouraged to play through the game, the first time you do it.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It's not feasible to do that every day dungeon one day on your first playthrough.
Is that you will wait to go into the dungeon for a couple weeks after you know where it is, because you'll go back into the real world, you'll work on your social links every day, you'll work on getting your social stats up and everything, so that when you go back into the dungeon, you're more powerful, maybe you've got some money, you can fuse some personas, that kind of thing. And that's sort of the idea. But either way you do it, it's sort of the same idea is there that, out in the real world, on days you aren't in the dungeon, you are going around town. It's not open world because it's not a huge world, but you can go wherever you want in the town, find people, do a social link event with them. That will take up that designated chunk of time. Or you can do, not everything you do is a social link. You can do other things, but they usually revolve around building either your social stats or your relationships with other characters.
Yeah, which all then ties into Persona Fusion, which sort of Persona Fusion is the linchpin that sort of ties the social link and the dungeon halves of the game together. Where Narukami, you've got you have the wild card ability, which basically means you can hold multiple personas at the same time, whereas other characters can't. And part of that is that through using Igor, you can fuse your personas together to make new, even more powerful personas. And, God, this is where it gets complicated. Every single persona is attached to a specific arcana derived from the tarot cards. So, like Fool, Chariot, Magician, what have you. And all of those arcanas are also tied to specific social links you have with people. So, for example, Yosuke is the Magician social link. If you get his social link up to, rank 8 or something, you then go into the Velvet Room, you take your personas, you want to fuse a magician persona like Dis or something, and you see when you can go fuse Dis, it says, social link rank 8, you will get this much extra XP if you fuse this persona. You fuse that persona, and it'll get 3 to 5 levels higher than its normal base level from just fusing it. And that's really critical because it is really, really difficult for you to level up personas normally, through grinding out experience, because it takes a huge amount of experience, and most of the personas of powerful skills are locked through their leveling them up. So the only way to really be effective in combat for your main character is to fuse personas that you have a powerful social link attached to, so that way they will have the most powerful abilities, so that when you go into the dungeon, you can wreck shit.
Yeah. And so, this is really interesting because Persona is often compared to Pokemon for good reason. It's,
Superficially, it has some elements similar to Pokemon.
Yeah, you have these creatures that you use to battle for you.
Yeah, and they've got elemental systems. They use them differently, but they both have ice against fire and stuff like that.
But one of the things that is sort of broken about Pokemon and has never been fixed is that you can basically get your starter Pokemon and never use another Pokemon in the entire game, except maybe at the water dungeon if you have Charmander or something.
Yeah. Since your starter Pokemon evolve into more powerful forms in every single Pokemon game, they remain basically the most powerful Pokemon you have for the entirety of the game until you get legendary ones.
You're never really encouraged to swap out Pokemon, train other ones. You sort of just forge this connection with your one or two main Pokemon, and that's what you do for the whole game.
Yeah.
And that's just fine, whatever. But in Persona, it's a completely different ideology there, where you are encouraged. You definitely forge a connection with your Personas. They're really well designed. They're really exciting to make, and you really love all the Personas you make. But you're always cycling through them, because every time you come out of a dungeon, even if you do a dungeon in, let's say, 2 days, 2 sessions, the first half you're going to be much more powerful. You're going to need to fuse personas, because you'll find personas in the dungeon you trigger these things called shuffle times at the end of battles, and you get persona cards.
Yeah.
And then you take all your persona cards, usually when you're done with the dungeon, you'll go back to the Velvet Room, you've leveled up, which means you can make new personas, you've got new personas to fuse, and then if you've been working well on your social links, then you can create some really powerful personas, and you're supposed to be cycling through them pretty constantly.
Yeah. If you are using one persona through 2 dungeons, you're basically playing the game wrong, unless it's something really specific that it has, it's not weak to anything, or it's got a really powerful debilitate skill or something like that. You are constantly moving through personas.
The only one I kept...
Yeah, you pick them up and drop them like crazy.
Yeah, the ones the main one I kept through, I think, 2 dungeons was Black Frost, because he's very powerful and he's weak to nothing, and in fact he reflects some things. But even then, I don't think I used him for more than 2 dungeons.
Yeah. Yeah, if you use a persona across 3 dungeons,
you're crazy. Yeah,
you're not going to be able to complete that 3rd dungeon.
No.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting system where that fusion thing, as you said, it's the linchpin to the entire game, because you have to fuse personas to get through those dungeons, and you're rewarded for fusing persona. Your social links. That means you can do those fusions better.
Yeah, and the social links are absolutely critical. If you do not have. If you're not fusing personas of a high social link ability, you are not getting personas that have powerful skills, and that's the most important part. It's not that they have, 15 more stat points than they did at their basic level. it's that, like, you know, if they only have 3 different moves, that persona is practically useless.
Yeah,
like it's, you know, a one-trick pony where you want a persona that can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, another interesting thing about the Persona games is that in comparison to Pokemon, in Pokemon you just have your 4 move slots, which was only created because the Game Boy could only support that much text, and it's something that it's been really weird they never changed that. Persona has 8, which is enough to challenge you when you get to the higher level personas and very much make you pick what you want this persona to be.
Oh god,
but still have enough that you can do that.
Yeah, it's definitely like you have enough slots to be able to make really diverse personas. Like, you know, I could make 2 of the same persona, and by having them inherit different skills and keeping different other skills, I could make 2 personas that are technically the same, but through their skill sets function completely differently in combat.
Yeah.
But then it's also, you know, when you get to the end of the game and you're making some of the higher level personas, like, picking which moves to keep is fucking hard. It can be heartbreaking where you're just like, this is the most powerful lightning spell in the game. And but I also really would like to have this like auto Tarukaja thing that just gives everybody an attack boost. It's like, I can't keep both. Like, one of these things has to go.
And we should also mention that, you know, in the dungeons, in your battles, it's not like Pokemon where all those not elemental, but sort of the status attacks you have, they're useless in Pokemon.
Yeah, where Tail Whip decreases someone's defense. In Pokemon, it's just like, that is the move that exists, so when you're fighting a rival at the beginning of the game where normally your ass should get kicked, you win because he uses Tail Whip 5 times where you just tackle his ass over and over and over again.
Yeah, so those things, I mean, you're kind of conditioned in a lot of RPGs to ignore those.
Yeah,
in Persona
is useless.
Yeah, in Persona the stat stuff is very critical.
Yeah, especially against boss fights, using buffs and debuffs is really, really useful. Like, there's one spell you can get called Debilitate. That's one of the most powerful spells in the entire game, because what it does is it will, against one enemy, it will reduce their attack power, their defense, and their chance to hit and their chance to evade all in one spell.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs 50 SP to cast, but using that just will completely allow you to trample a boss, because if all of those stats are reduced, they reduce those stats to a significant enough degree that you can trounce that boss. It's not going to do nearly enough damage. It's going to be taking way more damage than it normally would, and it's never going to fucking hit you.
Yeah. And it's also very critical on the other side where the enemies will use those things too, and you have to be very cognizant of that.
Yeah,
you have to have, Yukiko should have, Amrita to get rid of stat things.
Yeah, or Deikaja to keep up the enemies so that when they get their attack up, you can get that down, because if they have their attack up and they hit you, you know, it is not uncommon to see enemies doing 200 plus damage when my characters, I have maxed out level characters, the most health any character has is 650. So, doing 200 damage in one attack is pretty significant.
Yes. So, so that's sort of the basics of the Persona system, the fusion.
Yeah.
But let's stick with the dungeon stuff for now, because that's the most gameplay-heavy portions and complex, obviously. So, you know, when you go into the dungeons, when we were saying the term dungeon, I think this is as good a time as any to explain that how we call these things dungeons because that's their function, but they're really nicely made. They're not like in some RPGs like, you know, Zelda or Final Fantasy, where you really are going underground and just going through sort of this grimy area. Yeah. They're really imaginative places they're expressions of what the characters are going through. Yeah. So like Kanji, for instance, his dungeon is the bad bathhouse. Yeah. And so they're really nicely designed graphically. The production design on all of them, art design is really beautiful.
Yeah, they're all very distinct. The music for all of them is very distinct. They all have their own flavor.
Yeah,
it's got a very varied art design.
And it's a maze-like structure where when you're going through, there's all sorts of doors. You can go through different paths. And I think if you're playing the game well, you basically clear every floor by finding everything. You look at your map and make sure there's nothing you missed.
Yeah, definitely.
And then go through it. You find the stairs and move up, and that's a fun little thing. Is that most dungeons in RPGs you're going down, in Persona you're going up.
Yeah, other than the Naoto dungeon where you do go down, and that's kind of really strange when you do, because it sort of inverts what you become used to over the course of Persona 4.
Yeah, and it's interesting because running the dungeons, I think you would agree, is really fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And in many RPGs, that's kind of the grind part of it, isn't it? But
here, particularly for JRPGs, that's where the term grinding really comes from.
Right. And instead, they're so imaginatively designed, and they're so well made, and the music in all of them is so good. It's not just this generic dungeon music. It's specific to every character in every dungeon.
Yeah.
That, you know, playing through these, even ignoring the battles, it's just kind of fun to move through them.
Yeah, definitely. I think and this is one of the things that made me sort of like rekindle my faith in JRPGs when I first played it, is that it doesn't. I mean, it does a lot of new things with its turn-based combat system, but it is a turn-based combat system, and you are going into dungeons, and it's like that is the mechanics of the game, but they make it fun. Whereas, I have never once enjoyed the combat in a Final Fantasy game ever once in my life. Like, I've always felt that I never played Final Fantasy 13. I know you like the combat system of that one because it's very different, but like most turn-based combat, like Pokemon, I find it the most simplistic, dull thing I could possibly play are those sort of turn-based combat systems where it's basically just attack, 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 that's it. In Persona 4, the combat is immensely complex. There's a lot of different stuff that there's a lot of different strategies you can enact.
It's all intellectual.
Yeah, and they keep things changing constantly, so you don't just get used to one strategy and can just like stick with it for the whole game.
Yeah. That's very true, and I think that's why I like the battle system in Final Fantasy 13. Is it's similar in that there's so much going on. You're really thinking as you're doing it. It's not just attack, attack, attack. You're thinking about how every move counts. But that's very much what Persona is like, and so basically as you're moving through the dungeon, the shadows are crawling around. There's no random encounters. You see the shadows, you initiate.
Yeah.
If you really fuck up, they could initiate, but you have to be pretty bad at the game.
Yeah, especially in this version, they make it. There's this nice trick in Persona 4 The Golden where they change how the shadows move in the overworld when you can go initiate combat with them, where they take, like, once they see you, they take, like, a second to actually move and react. So once I realized that, basically every single time I would just, walk straight up to a shadow, it would start reacting to me, I just run right past it, flick the stick backwards, turn around, and smack it in the back and get player advantage.
Yeah. So, you can either get just a normal encounter where you just have the battle, you can get a player advantage where you get an extra turn first, or enemy advantage where they get an extra turn first if they attack you.
Yeah, and sometimes when they get enemy advantage, you can get fucked hard when they get enemy
really
advantage,
hard.
because you can die really quickly in this game. Attacks do a lot of damage. Battles are 2 to 3 turns max.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, if you're, like, powerful enough, like in my game, like enemies wouldn't even get to attack. Once I would like figure out what like basically their weaknesses were, I would finish it before it would come around to their turn. Yeah.
So now let's talk about the battle system. The battle screen is I just want to say the graphics of this. The battle screens are really fun because they really show that there's like a really nice sort of arena kind of thing you're in. Like for each dungeon, the battle like area is really imaginatively designed. Everyone's there. They're moving around. It's not like old pixel Final Fantasy where you're on one side, they're on the other.
Yeah, I like you kind of surround the enemies. I like that you kind of get them boxed in.
Yeah, there's just a lot of visual information going on. But your basic options are pretty simple. You've got you can guard for your turn, which will negate or decrease enemy damage to you.
Yeah, and it will prevent them from being able to exploit elemental weaknesses.
Yeah.
That's the key from the guarding thing.
You can attack yourself with your own weapons that you equip. So like Narukami will take his katana, run up, and just slash them.
Yeah, do a very basic
physical
strength
damage.
Yeah, just strength stat-based attack that also can have a chance to crit.
But the most important option on there in terms of how you will usually play the game is skill. And that's where you go to you access your persona and all your other characters because you can control them directly.
Yeah.
And you say, skill, and you pick one of their skills, and it's either uses SP, which is your stat points, or your, HP, which is your health points. That's for physical attacks, and they can do powerful damage, elemental or physical, against the enemies.
Yeah.
And then when you're playing as Narukami, obviously you can also go to the persona option and switch which persona you're using.
Yeah.
And you eventually have 12 slots.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the other characters, they all have one, so it's a little simpler to manage them.
Yeah, God, it would be so crazy if everybody in that game could have 12 different personas at once.
It'd be impossible.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's just describe the battle system. How does it work?
Okay, so the basic flow of how a normal battle just happens, that's ignoring boss battles, is you go, you initiate your combat. It is all stat based. You have strength, agility, endurance, magic, and luck, and so it's you have your stats. And they all basically do what you would expect those stats to do, and so it's all based on sort of numbers and rolls. So it's it's turn-based combat, and so once you go in, let's say every single enemy. Okay, not every single enemy has a weakness, but most enemies have a weakness to a certain type of attack, be it physical or some of the elements like fire, ice, wind, and lightning. Or there's also 2 other things called light and dark that are instant kill spells that have a high chance to miss against most enemies, but if an enemy is weak to light or dark attacks, the light or dark attack will hit them no matter what. And so most of the combat revolves around you trying to the first time you encounter a type of enemy, which is like you encountered basically 3 sets of sort of groups of enemies in every single dungeon. So it's like for like the first 3 floors, you're going to run into the same 3 or 4 groups of different enemies. So it's like the first time you run into a new group of enemies, you sort of like do these rounds with all of your characters, casting, you want like, I'm going to cast lightning on this dude, wind on that dude, ice on that dude, fire on that dude, just trying out everything I can, trying to figure out what these enemies are weak to. Then once you figure that out, they have this thing where they have the status effect where if you get hit by something you are weak to, you become downed. And if all of the enemies become downed at the same time, you can trigger something called an all-out attack that like 80% of the time will kill all of the enemies. So the normal combat is you try to figure out what the enemies are weak to the first time you encounter them, and then it will store that information and you can like bring it up whenever. So it's like once you find out, this like tongue dude is weak to fire, every time I then encounter this specific type of enemy, it will tell me, this is weak to fire, you figured this out, you can remember it. And so you exploit the weaknesses the first time you encounter them, and then every subsequent time they'll mix it up by like throwing different enemies in together, so you can't necessarily always do fire against everybody because like some of those dudes might repel the fire back at you or something like that. So you have to try to figure out how to exploit all the enemies' weaknesses, get them all down at the same time, and go in for an all-out attack. And that's basically 80% of your fights, is just trying to do that and making it more difficult as it goes on by making some enemies aren't weak to anything. Some enemies like will repel or absorb a large amount of different types of attacks. So you have to be really cautious and like not necessarily like using a really powerful lightning spell on someone you don't know what it's going to do on, because it might reflect back at you and fucking do 200 points of damage against you. And what's really nice about this combat system is, one, it keeps it very intellectual. You have to be constantly thinking about what you're doing, since they mix up the enemies all the time. You're constantly having to go through this phase of trying to figure out what they're weak against. And then once you do figure out what they're weak against, that means that most of the fights against those enemies can go by in about a minute to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the combat can go by super, super fast. You're constantly going in and out of combat once you know strategies that work.
Yeah. And, there's sort of basic strategies that happen no matter what. If you, hit an enemy with something they are weak to, you get your one more attack.
Yeah.
You can get another attack. You can either just attack them again with something that works or attack someone else. And if you get everybody down, like you would to get a one more attack, but if you get everyone down, then you can have everyone rush in for an attack, and it does basically heavy almighty damage. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And
there's an analysis option that keeps track of everything you've learned, so you don't have to, if you forget what an enemy's weak to, you don't have to refigure it out, which is nice. And then about, once, pretty late into the game, for the last couple dungeons, then Rise, who's your sort of guide character, becomes powerful enough that she can just tell everyone's weaknesses.
Yeah, if you have, if you're going up against an enemy that's weak to lightning and you have a guy in that has a lightning spell, she will just tell you, hey, these guys are weak to lightning.
Yeah.
Which is nice. That feature is not in the original version of the game, but it's a nice bit of pacing for the golden version, because it means, once you know how to, use the combat system well, it'll just be like, we're going to cut out this middleman step for you, and you're going to do this thing where you try everything on every single enemy. Let's just cut that process out at this point because you figured it out.
It would be no fun if they did that for you right at the beginning, but having it at that point in the game really, I think it kind of relivens your interest in the combat.
Yeah, because it makes it even faster because you don't have to try to figure out what everyone's weak to right away.
And then for the Marie, at least for me and how I was leveled, for the Marie and Izanami dungeons, you have full analysis all the time.
Yeah, that was the same for me.
Yeah, so pretty good. The combat system is a ton of fun. And I think that's really what distinguishes it from a lot of JRPGs, where it's really fun to do the battles. And
I agree.
Sometimes the dungeons can feel a little long, but that's the whole idea, is that they are very much endurance runs.
Yeah.
You're really not supposed to just go in and do every dungeon in a day. If you're really good, you can, and it's fun that way. But the idea is that your SP is sort of this management system where that's the thing that will deplete. Your HP you really don't have to worry about. You have healing skills. It's really easy to get healing items. So HP really isn't going to fuck you, but your SP will go down pretty fast because you have to use it for a lot of attacks. And if you run out of SP, you really have to get out of the dungeons. You have these items called go-homes, or eventually the Triesto spell.
Yeah.
And you can use those to get out of the dungeon. It will save your progress. You can go back to that dungeon wherever you left off, on that floor at least.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of a very clever way to make sure that the dungeons are well-paced, and,
Yeah, Once you're feeling tired of the dungeon, you want that is kind of an intentional effect that the game's putting on you. That the game wants you to back out of the dungeon and to go back into the real world and sort of spend some more time social linking, making new personas, then come back in sort of fresh, reinvigorated, and then go for that last haul.
Yeah. And that's very different than most JRPGs, because usually when you're tired of a dungeon, you just slug through it and hope you'll find a save point.
You're just tired of that dungeon, and then it sort of, I guess, leads into the most critical thing about Persona is the pacing of it. That what Persona has, I think, that defines it for me over other JRPGs is that the dungeon stuff is not the only stuff in the game.
Right.
Whereas, in most JRPGs, just in most games, when you get tired of that main combat mechanic, you're fucked, because that is 90% of that game.
Yeah.
Whereas with Persona, that's 60% of the game. It is as far as the interactive stuff, it is the technical majority of it, but
to a certain degree, I mean, you don't, when you do a social link, you don't control your characters. You're mostly just watching it, but you have a lot of agency. In fact, you have total agency in everything you do in the real world.
You have the choices to make what you're going to do, but still the actual gameplay parts of it. Because each dungeon is probably about 5 hours long. That is significant. That is as long as most JRPGs is just dungeon stuff.
Yes, very true. But and I think that's very accurate what you just said about if you get tired of dungeons, you're kind of fucked, and I think that's. For instance, I've said that I love the battle system in Final Fantasy 13, and that's why I like that game. And I really do love it and never would get tired of it, but that's the thing about Final Fantasy 13 is it's not like Persona where there's another half of it where you do other stuff. That's the gameplay of Final Fantasy, is the battles. And so that's the downfall of certain Final Fantasy games. It's what I like about 13, but that game could be legitimately great if they had something else to go along with it. And in Persona, one of the reasons why this game is a masterpiece is because the dungeons are really fun, and then the other stuff you do is even better.
Yeah.
So, and I think we already kind of covered the day-to-day stuff. I don't know what more there is to say about it than, you go around, you do your social links. Yeah. There's a lot of other stuff, especially in the Golden, you can choose to do. You can travel to Okina City and see a movie with one of your friends. It'll level up their personas. You can go do, shopping and stuff. That stuff will not take away your time.
Yeah.
But pretty much any event you trigger with another person is what's going to take up your time.
Just doing normal day-to-day stuff going shopping is not going to move you to evening. But anytime you're doing a social link or even, I think the one that's the funniest, I don't think you probably never even really discovered this because it's a really small thing, but on rainy days outside the Shiroku store, there is a capsule machine that will only operate on rainy days, and you get one junk item like a pinwheel or something out of it that does 50 points of wind damage if you consume that item, and that takes up your time just operating that fucking capsule machine. I imagine there's probably a 1 in a dozen chance or something of you getting something really useful out of that capsule machine, but that's a fucking capsule machine.
You can also, you can try to progress. Once you get far enough in a social link, sometimes the next time you go to hang out with that person, it will not automatically trigger the next event. You have to do some stuff in between.
Yeah.
And Golden adds some nice ways to make that a little easier.
Yeah.
So, at night, you can go outside and maybe, Chie will just be standing there. You can go talk to Chie, and that will fill in the gap.
Yeah, that'll give you some, I guess what I would consider social link points. You have a certain tally of points you need to get to be able to trigger the next social link event. And there's in the original game, the only way to sort of get around that was for your school friends. If you do really well on tests, you become more popular. Unlike in real life, when you do really well on tests, everybody hates you if they do poorly on that test.
You can also go to the shrine every evening, and you can do it during the day too. But you can go there and take a fortune, and that will basically that'll also give you social link points.
Yeah,
you have to tie it around a tree.
Yeah. Well, it's not a tree; it's a little
thing
these wires that you tie them onto. But it's in the Golden they add a lot of tiny little choices you can make. I mean, if that relationship fortune thing was not there, I would not have been able to max out my social links, because at the end of the game, that was my strategy, was I'm going to get all these people that these 5 social links I have to the point where I can't advance them anymore, and then every night I'm just pulling out relationship fortunes for fucking everybody.
Yeah.
And it is a key strategy that they added into this that you can exploit.
So what else is there to talk about from a gameplay standpoint?
I guess talk about sort of the mechanics of the boss fights, I guess. Because that is very... Because, like I said, what I was talking about, the weakness is that is how the normal fights work, boss fights are completely different. Boss fights
they're very challenging.
Yeah, they are also basically like you describe the dungeon as an endurance run. The bosses are very much like that, where the bosses will have basically 2 to 3 strategies that they will like general strategies they will enact over the course of their like health bar, and as you like whittle them down, they'll start like pulling out different moves and stuff. But the main thing you have to do with the bosses is sort of figure out a combination of things that is going to work for you, like, have Yukiko heal everybody every 2 turns, have Chie the fucking, like, boosting everybody's attack every opportunity she gets, and it's like, and then, maybe, like, have Yosuke and Narukami on just, like, spamming, like, wind spells or something, and just, like, you figure out what works against that boss, and just keep with it until the boss will maybe change something up, and you'll have to start guarding every other turn or something like that. It's like, the boss fights are designed around you have to come up with a strategy and stick with it until the point where you realize the strategy will no longer work and sort of like adjust it to something that will work. And it's a nice balancing act you have to take every single boss fight.
And they typically take a long time.
They definitely do.
You can spend more than an hour on one boss. It can take a really long time.
They have lengthy health bars.
Yes.
It is an endurance run. You have to because if they didn't do that, it wouldn't. Those fights would not be significant in any way because there's no like sense of. Because a lot of times, it sounds really simple when you say just like pick a strategy and stick with it, but sometimes it just simply won't work. Like something as simple as you missing or the boss getting a crit on someone can completely fuck everything over for you. And
so you have to respond very quickly.
Yeah, and you have to be on your toes and be willing to change things up and hope that things scrape out okay.
Yeah.
Because especially early on in the game when you don't have a good handle on the mechanics, those boss fights are really challenging. I know you specifically had a lot of trouble with the Kanji one.
I had a little bit of trouble with the Kanji one. Yeah, I had to do it once or twice. It was more the Yukiko one really fucked me the first time I did it. I swear I had to do that like 5 times. That's a long boss fight. Kanji one was kind of tough. The one I remember that frustrated me, I only had to do it twice, but frustrated me was the Risei one, because you have to go through Risei's whole boss. Then you have to go through a lot of cutscenes, and you have to do Teddy's whole boss. And Teddy's boss is the first one in the game that just has an insane amount of HP.
Yeah.
That's kind of the turning point for the boss fights. Like, that's what they're like from that point out, basically. Although the Naoto one is super easy.
Yeah. It's actually kind of interesting, too, because in the Golden version, they change some of the bosses very slightly. Like, they add some weaknesses in the Kanji boss fight that were not there originally. So they smooth out that difficulty curve a little bit, but I think part of that, I do feel that like difficulty spike when you hit the Yukiko boss is really important because it sort of smacks you in the face with reality and says like, hey asshole, stop using Izanagi, like that's your first persona. You can't be using him anymore. You need to go out, fuse some fucking personas, like get your shit together. You're not getting past this point unless you demonstrate you have a basic understanding of how important social links are, and how important persona fusion is, and like the basic strategies for handling bosses. Like they definitely make that jump really difficult. So once you get past that point, you have a much better understanding of how the game works.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about most of the gameplay stuff. Do you want to talk about how you over-leveled yourself like a motherfucker?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's move to let's just have some personal stories about our playthroughs.
Yeah. I think that'd be good.
Is that for me? Obviously I played the original game. I played Persona 3, so I'm very experienced with the Persona games. And then in particular, the thing I did right before I played Persona 4, the Golden, was play the epilogue, which is basically a really long 30-hour campaign, but in the scope of a 100-hour-long game. It's an epilogue for Persona 3 called Persona 3 Fest. And
Episode Igus?
Yeah, Episode Igus, the Japanese name for it. The Answer, the English name for it. The Episode Igus is such a cooler name.
Yeah.
But that section of gameplay is automatically on the hard difficulty, and the Persona 3 gameplay combat is already harder than the Persona 4 one. And so having this 30-hour in Persona 3 Fest, that epilogue is really heavy on the combat in a way that at first really turned me off, and then it kind of broke me on the combat, where now it made me fall in love with the combat all over again, where I like it even more now than I used to. It's kind of weird. It's almost like part of it almost kind of feels like Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, but going from the already harder Persona 3 to even harder epilogue, and then kicking it down to where Persona 4 the Golden is not like a really easy game or anything, but it's easier than vanilla Persona 4. So going from the hardest Persona stuff I had ever played to then immediately going to the easiest Persona stuff I had ever played made I should have played this game on hard, no doubt about it, because I breezed through this game because they just give you so many things. Like they add elements to the shuffle time thing at the end of fights where you can get little cards, the cup cards that recharge HP and SP. You could not get that in the original game, so when I discovered that and I was in the Yukiko dungeon, I was like, oh my god, I can just in this dungeon without spending any fucking money, I can recharge like little bits of SP after basically every other fight. That was like a gift from God. Like it was like from being so used to the normal Persona 4 and Persona 3 stuff of like this is an endurance run, like you are going as far as you can, and you might have a couple of chewing souls or something to recharge a little bit of SP, but like that's it. You've got like a couple of pick-me-ups you can use, or you can blow like 100,000 yen on Fox and get everything back. It's like I just ground out the like top 2 floors of the Yukiko dungeon right before the boss for like 10 minutes, just getting all my SP up so I could just to the point where I could go in and take out the boss. So that overleveled me a little bit. But then also something they add in Persona 4 the Golden, and this is my theory that like past this point, I was significantly overleveled. I was 20 to 30 levels higher than the recommended content. Like I reached the maximum level. Okay, I reached level 96 by the time I fought the Adachi boss, which is you should be about level 75 when you fight the Adachi boss. So
I should say even I was overleveled pretty like enough to be somewhat significant for much of the game. But that's like when I fought Adachi, I was probably at 80 at that point.
Yeah. But
being at 96, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah. So I don't know how that happened, but I'm speculating one of the things they added in the Golden is this is something that is in is in Persona 3 and 4, but they changed how they work in Golden, or these like little golden hand monsters that are really rare to find. In normal Persona 4, if you defeated them, you would just get chest keys, so you could open like really big chests, and that was it. That's like the only way you got chest keys. In Persona 4 the Golden, instead, those dudes give you like about, I would say like 15,000 experience and probably about 20,000 yen for every single one you kill, which is massive. That is so much. That is basically, if you kill 2 to 3 of them in one fight, that is a level for everybody. Like that is so much fucking XP. And so I very quickly, as soon as I realized that was the case, that those guys give you so much XP, I very quickly came up with the strategy of using a lot of almighty damage and then a lot of physical damage to take them out. And I think I was able, since I was so experienced with the combat system to this point, I was able to come up with that strategy quicker than you are kind of meant to. So by the time I was in the Kanji dungeon, I was basically clearing, like, because those guys will escape if they get like 2 turns. If it comes around to their turn twice and they haven't died yet, those dudes will run away. So it is really frustrating when they do, because it's like,
I wasted a lot of stuff.
There goes 15,000 XP. God damn it. But, by the time I was in the Kanji dungeon, it was pretty rare for one of those guys to get away, unless it was a group of 5 or 4 of them, where it's like, if one of them gets away, that's fine. Like, I've got a bigger pile of stuff to take care of. Like, one of you guys can run. But, yeah, like, and I think that's what it is. I have no fucking clue, because it's like, I was so ridiculously overleveled, where, like, by the time I finished the game in the original playthrough, and granted, they also did not have the Marie dungeon in the original playthrough. There's one dungeon lower, but I was probably about level 81 when I defeated the first boss in the original playthrough. Because the last Persona I made was level 78 dude, so I would have had to have been around there. And so in this game, I was level 99 for a good chunk before I actually fought the last boss.
Yeah.
No fucking clue how that happened, but it was awesome because, dude, when you get overleveled in that game, you are a fucking monstrosity because, you're about 20, if you fucking get to the max level, you're about 20 levels higher than you should be by the end of the game. Like, those personas you are making are ridiculous. They have, one of them, Lucifer, has an ability. He's like you have to be like level 94 to make him or something like that, so he's like the highest level one in terms with level cap to make. That motherfucker has an ability that after every single fight, all of your HP and all of your SP are instantly restored. That's ridiculous. It's kind of useless at that point in the game, but if I did a New Game Plus and pulled his ass out, like the first 5 dungeons, like, I wouldn't have to think about them at all. Because just every single fight, all my SP is back. Don't have to think about it.
Yeah. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
And then this is so funny, you decided you were going to finish your compendium because you were close enough.
Yeah, because since, the reason why I never even tried to in the first game was because again, Lucifer is like, you have to be like level 94 to 96 to make that motherfucker. If I'm at level 81, there's no way I'm going to grind out 15 levels to then make this like really specific persona. But since I was already high enough level to make him, I was like, I could make every single persona. It was like, I have this opportunity was not anticipating to have. I was like, I have to do this. If I can do this, I have to make every single Persona, because I never did that in normal Persona 4. I never did that in Persona 3. So it's like, I have to fill out the compendium. And so I did spend a good, 5 to 6 hours just grinding out, getting a bunch of money, grabbing a bunch of Persona cards from the various dungeons, and fusing out the last, 10% of that compendium is an expensive, time-consuming process, because...
Well, so you were running all these dungeons just to get money, and you were getting nothing else.
Yeah.
And so
the experience was completely useless. It was really nice when the shuffle time would come up, and if there was something that was 3 more, if you paid you get 3, you can pick 3 more cards if you pick this card, but you it takes away all of your XP. I was like, that's fine. Yeah. I don't need any fucking XP. I'm level 99, cunt. Take it away.
It was just very funny to hear about, because it's the Marie dungeon was useless to you because you were 99, and that dungeon gives you very little EXP and absolutely no money.
It gives you 0 yen for every single fight. So at a certain point, here, let's just talk about the Marie dungeon now. I guess that's
actually probably
this is an interesting point of discussion.
It's definitely
we're both sort of critical of.
Yeah, it's definitely the least interesting dungeon in the game in terms of gameplay. Story-wise, I think we already talked about it. It's really cool. It's
adding on to that, having that cap to the Marie story and figuring out what's really going on with her is really interesting.
But what that dungeon does is it's basically trying to sort of challenge you at this point in the game. It's very much almost like a challenge dungeon, an extra one. It is an extra, obviously, in the golden version. And so what happens is when you go in, all your items are stripped away. Yeah. For one, you are just kind of sucked into doing this one day. You don't. It just happens at the end of the ski trip.
Yeah, and you have to do it all in one day.
Right.
You can't go out and do social link shit or anything.
No, you have to do this all in one day. You do have access to the Velvet Room and to a save point.
Yeah.
And you have to. It's a normal length dungeon and floor wise, but basically you have no items.
It does give you some items, but all the items you normally have are taken away. So
and the items you get in the dungeon are absolutely crucial to playing this dungeon. And if you're not level 99.
Yeah.
And anyway, so you have to go through, your SP is halved at the end of every battle, which is incredibly frustrating. And then you have, that's basically it, I guess, but the enemies get very tough near the top. And it's just it is just very much, it heightens that sense of being an endurance run.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, I guess I'll talk about my experiences. It was different than yours because you were so overpowered at that point. My experience with it was, I thought it was actually really fun for the first couple floors because it was so different, and it was sort of managing SP in a different way. It added this kind of extra intellectual challenge to it. It's a very visually appealing dungeon to go through, great music, so that's pretty cool. But you go on, and you go on, and you go on, and it feels like the longest dungeon in the game.
It does have the largest floors, because at a certain point, every other floor is this huge maze where every single time you sort of basically open a door, you have an 80% chance that opening that door is going to trigger a fight. So it's you have this. It's just you have no idea where the exit is. You're just walking around opening all these different doors and getting in all these fights, just being where the fuck is the exit?
And at some points you're pretty fucking weak if you're not level 99.
Yeah.
And so it's.
I was level 96 here.
Okay, level 96. All right. So it was it was pretty tough. And it tough not in terms of it was not a huge challenge. I don't think I died in this dungeon or anything. I didn't die during the boss fight, I know. But it was just definitely I was oh my fucking god, this is going on forever. It was one of those ones where I sat down intending I'm just going to play the whole dungeon right now, and I had to just put my Vita into sleep and get to it the next day, because it was just A, time was running out, and B, it was just I don't care anymore. So you definitely had to recharge my own sort of real life batteries in the middle. But so that's kind of what that dungeon's like, and it's the boss fight itself. I actually found fun. It's one of the fun.
I really liked the boss fight.
Yeah, I liked it too.
It was a clever one.
Yeah.
They didn't just throw out another. This is going to take 5 hours because he's got a huge health bar kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a really fun boss fight, but the dungeon itself is pretty clunky, and it's definitely the least fun dungeon in the game. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
What did you think?
So for me, I had a very strange experience with that dungeon, because again, I was level 96 when I went in there. I think I was level 99 by the time I came out. But so by the time I went in there, I had just made right before I went into the dungeon, when I went into the Velvet Room, that's when I made Lucifer, who gets that victory cry spell that recharges all of your SP at the end of every single fight. And it was a very strange point in the game to get that ability, because as you said, like part of the thing about that dungeon is that it halves your SP at the end of every single fight. And they do give you items that recharge your SP at the beginning of every single turn, but it's only like 5 to 8 SP.
Yeah,
you get better versions as it goes on. So it's not like you are always out of SP, but the idea of the dungeon is you're meant to manage your SP very strategically, because you're going to be on the ropes constantly. Like if you're using like too many spells in one fight, you're going to get fucked.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of it. But I had just made Lucifer, who had Victory Cry. So what happened for me in that dungeon was every single fight, I would like everybody else's SP was like really low. Like past a certain point, I think it stops having their SP. It's like if they have like a handful, like 20 or so.
Yeah.
Or actually, it might not even be that they stopped having it. It might have just been that having it did so little compared to them like recharging. Like I didn't pay that much attention to the mechanics. But so for everybody else, they had a really small amount of SP, but enough to cast like one spell per fight, and they would get it back fine. But for me, because you also at this point you have a thing that recharges some of your SP at the end of every single fight, so it's like it sort of ended up balancing out at a certain point for everyone else. But for me, I had Victory Cry. So what happened was at the end of every single fight, my SP would be instantly recharged to full, and then also instantly halved. So I was going through. So my dude in that dungeon constantly had half SP. Which normally that would be like whatever, but you're not supposed to have SP in that half SP in that dungeon. So it was already it was completely unfair, like me being that high level. But that specific ability meant that my guy could cast whatever spell I wanted without me having to consider it whatsoever, as long as I had Lucifer in by the time that fight ended. So that complete mechanic of that dungeon completely fell away from me because it did not matter.
Yeah,
and then. So at a certain point, I also felt like, because one, all that would be useful to me at this point in the game is getting more money and items. And since like the items you get in that dungeon you can't take away and you get no money, it was like these fights do literally nothing. Like I get nothing from these fights. So at a certain point, like after the third floor or so, I just decided, fuck it, I'm just going to run to the end of this dungeon, and which was a little bit annoying when you got to the floors where you had to like the maze-like floors. But it was actually kind of fun once I reached that point where I was like, I'm going to ignore every shadow I run into. I'm just going to try to find the floor, like the stairs, as quickly as possible. I'm just going to try to get to the end. And it kind of added this sense of, since you have to do that dungeon all in one day, and like, you know, sort of in my head, the sort of canonical experience of that game is that Narukami and Marie are romantically attached to each other.
Yeah.
So like having that character motivation with it as well made it she like sort of like this desperate run that's like, I just have to get to Marie as quickly as possible. It kind of added something to the experience in a really weird way that it's like you would like is not sort of like native to the game itself. Yeah. And then once I got to the actual boss, one of the things that's really, really interesting about that boss fight is that the Marie boss repels every single type of damage you can cast at her, except for almighty damage. And so what you're supposed to do is that throughout the dungeon you get these items that you can use to sort of basically drop their elemental, like an enemy's elemental resistance. But I hadn't really been paying attention to that because I had been skipping through the vast majority of that dungeon, so I wasn't really paying attention to what items I was getting, or the fact that most of the enemies at a certain point also repelled most of the damage, so like, you're sort of trying to teach you to use these items against enemies. And so by the time I got to that boss, I went through a good, 4 turns where I basically just used almighty damage against that boss because I had Naoto who could do it, and I had my guy who could do it. And like Naoto and almighty damage spells are sort of really extravagant. They use a lot of SP, but they don't do like massive amounts of damage because they like nothing is really resistant to it. And so I had this really weird thing where if I had kept on going with that, it would have taken a while. I feasibly could have defeated that boss without using the strategy you're meant to use defeating that boss by using those items to drop their resistance, because it never occurred to me, because I never use items, and I never paid attention to what items I got from that dungeon. But past a certain point, I realized there's gotta be some, this is not the way you're supposed to fight this boss, is by fucking spamming Megiddo spells all the time and using 30 SP every single turn. So eventually I decided to look through my item list and use that, but I thought I had a very strange experience going through the Marie dungeon.
Yeah.
So any other things about Persona, personal experiences?
I don't know. I don't know if I have any stories like that. I think one of the things I thought I should mention is that obviously this is a game where there are a lot of parts that where a lot of stuff happens. There's just lengthy sections. And, you have to... It's sort of like if you were just playing this on your console in the original version without like an emulator with save states or something, there would be just a lot of times you're like, oh man, I have to just clear out 5 hours of my life.
Yeah.
And I think they did some really nice adaptations in the Golden to make it really easy just to play whenever. And part of that is just the Vita's infrastructure is great for a game like this, where you can just hit the power button, it's in sleep, leave it there as long as you fucking want, and you can come back whenever. Yeah. So if you are in the middle of a cutscene or a fight and something comes up, you just sleep mode it, and you can go do your thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of good save points. So my sort of general experience playing this game was sort of really laid back, where I could just play it whenever I needed to. If I had 30 minutes, just take it out for 30 minutes and play it. If I had an hour between classes, do that. Or if I really just wanted to sit down for an evening and devote myself to that, it was very fun to do that too.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted to mention that I think they made really good strides to make this a portable game in every sense of the word, where you really can play it portably.
Yeah. One of the most, outside of just like adding new content to the game, they made a whole host of sort of usability improvements that I was really glad to have, because, like, this is a very complex game, and sort of managing all of that in the menus and stuff at a certain point in the original Persona 3 and the original Persona 4 was very difficult and sort of cumbersome in a way that was really understandable because there's so much going on. But they... Like, hopefully, like, this is the standard of sort of, like, what these interfaces will be like in Persona 5.
Yeah.
Because, there's just little things like the fact that if you die on most of the difficulties, I don't think this works on the hardest ones, but if you die on a floor in the dungeon, it will just restart you at the beginning of that floor. I guess, like, it never happened to me, but I understand that is what happens.
Yeah, I only died during boss fights, obviously. That's what happened.
And that thing freaked me out for a second, because when I played the game... in normal Persona 4, that doesn't happen. Like, you have to, like, every time you die, you have to reload a save point. And so part of, one strategy you have to come up with is you have to have a bunch of go-homes that kick you out to the front of the dungeon, because that's where the save point is. So it's like, so when you start playing the game, and I didn't know about that it will respond to you thing, I told you, get a shit ton of go-homes.
And I got a shit ton of go-homes.
So important. And, it is still an important item to have, because it will help you kick out to the beginning of the dungeon, but... You don't need to do it, like, I would do it, like, every single floor just to get a hard save point. But then also, before every single, like, final boss room, there would also be a save point there. In Persona 4 the Golden, since it just restarts you at the beginning of that floor, they didn't bother putting a save point there because there's no real reason to have it. Like, the main reason that save point was there was just almost as a checkpoint right before the boss fight. And so when I got to the Yukiko boss and I wasn't thinking about it and I saw there was no save point there, I freaked out for a second. I was like, wait, what? Why is there... Oh, God, like, if I need to back the fuck out of here. I need to go to the beginning of that dungeon. Like, I need this hard save point before a boss.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny how I was so conditioned by original Persona 4 that not seeing that save point there, I, like, had this, like, really brief moment of, like, really serious panic. Like, it's something where, like, I get so involved into those games that it's, like, not having that there, I was like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Like, my world was turned upside down for, like, a brief second.
Yeah.
Where's my save point? I need my save point, goddammit. It's my comfort save point.
Yes. Alright, so anything else to talk about on that level?
There's so many little tiny things. Like, I think the biggest... Okay, this is the biggest thing. This is the most important thing they did, that they put in the Golden, that was not in the original game. Marie is cool, whatever. The Dot's Social Link, that's pretty awesome. The biggest fucking thing, you can pick what skills personas inherit when you fuse personas. That, to me, that's fucking amazing. Because the original game, like every persona, when you like fuse two personas together to make a more powerful one, it can inherit like 3 to 4 of those other personas' skills. And in the original game, how that worked was you basically had to roll the dice every single time. You didn't have to commit every time you rolled the dice. Like, you would like select both the personas you wanted to fuse and then see what skill loadout he had. And then it's like that was like completely by like luck. And then you'd like back out, reselect those personas, go back in and see what he had that time. So you're just like rolling the dice over and over and over and over again. And if there were like some personas that it's just like, I need to have 2 or 3 of these skills on this persona. Like, that is the reason I'm making this persona, is to have all these skills on one fucking dude. I would sit there for like 10 minutes at a time, just like back out, select, back out, select. God damn it! Like, you only have 2 of the 3. In this game, you can fucking just pick them from a list, and that is 100%. That is the best improvement. That is, that probably cut out about 2 hours of extra game time, just not having to go back in and read all that stuff.
I can't even comment on this because I cannot imagine how you would play the game without that. Just can't imagine it. I just don't know. Yeah. I don't know how the game works. I can't see it that way. It's just because that is so fundamental to how I fused Personas, and fusing Personas is so fundamental to how you play the game.
Yeah, because it makes it just so much easier to fuse the Personas you want to fuse and get what you want to get out of it, where you can, at a certain point, I was able to pass down a handful of skills that I wanted on basically every Persona I was going to use, like Invigorate or Auto Tarakazu, that just gives someone a DAC boost at the beginning of every single turn. It's like I could just pass those skills down when I got them and just not have to worry about it. In the original game, you just have to drop that at some point. At some point, you just have to be like, I'm just going to settle for what I've got because I don't want to do this for an hour, just backing out and reselecting these Personas. So, if you were someone who's played the other Persona games and is on the fence about playing Persona 4 the Golden, that alone is the most amazing feeling. Just being like, I don't have to worry about it. I can just pick whatever I want.
Yeah.
I can have my cake and I can eat it too. Thank you, Persona 4 the Golden.
All right, so I don't think there's anything else for me to talk about on that level. And I think we're running long here. Obviously, we've spoken a long time, so why don't we... Obviously, Persona 4 is something that could merit dozens and dozens of podcasts of this length if we want to talk about all the scenes we loved and things like that.
We never even really mentioned the event scenes, the big, camping trip. We talked about the band thing a little bit, but there's a dozen of those. And
I think the thing is, if you were to do a podcast properly about Persona 4, you would have to just...
You'd have to do a podcast of you'd have to spend a year of just that, and that is just that podcast is all this, over the course of a year, every single episode is just Persona 4.
And that's kind of what's so fun about playing is that when Sean and I played it, we were just playing it, we both had a Vita and were playing it, and so we would always just talk about, wasn't that scene awesome, and talk about how fun it was.
Yeah.
And we can't really do that in this format, which is too bad.
Yeah.
But it's definitely the fun of playing Persona. If you're going to play Persona, find a friend who wants to play it too.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. But let's finish up our whole Persona 4 podcast spectacular extravaganza by talking about maybe... the most important thing about this game.
Skill inheritance. We already talked about that.
No, and I'm kind of joking, but it is very crucial to how I enjoy this game, which is the music.
Yeah.
Shoji Meguro, the composer, is a fucking genius.
Yeah.
And Persona, this is not the kind of game where, the composer is someone they bring in at the end to put the music on.
Oh, yeah,
Shoji Meguro is a key part of the creative process.
He is highly involved in every single, part of making these games.
Yeah, it's sort of like the equivalent you would know maybe from American gaming is Marty O'Donnell and the Halo games.
Yeah.
Where Marty O'Donnell,
he's involved in every process of the game. He's not just the dude who composes the music. He's a dude who does the sound design. He just gets involved in how all the music and sound works in the game on not just on a completely thematic level, completely tied into what's going on. Not as bringing on Hans Zimmer to compose the menu music for Call of Duty 4.
Yeah.
I like Hans Zimmer, but it's there's a very different there's a very different relationship between Shoji Meguro and Atlas and Hans Zimmer and Infinity Ward.
Yeah, and Hans Zimmer has enough assistants, I guarantee you he didn't work a day on his life on Call of Duty 4. Anyway, that's another discussion. So, the music in Persona 4 is interesting because it functions very differently than I think we think of game music.
Yeah.
It it's all these songs, they're all really fucking good. But basically, it's a smaller pool of songs than you would imagine a 70-hour game having.
Yeah.
It really is sort of there are just situations where songs will play, and you hear them every time in that situation.
Yeah.
And what's so amazing about the quality of the music in this game is you never get tired of them.
Yeah. In fact, when they're gone for certain sections, you miss them.
Yeah, for instance, whenever you are at home with Nanako or Dorjima, or if they're both there, it plays the song Signs of Love, which is a really fun song.
Yeah.
And it also sometimes plays when you're just out on the world map. And it's a great little song. And yet, when they're gone, Signs of Love goes away.
Yeah, and the song that replaces it's called Alone.
Yeah.
It's the sad piano music. Yeah, it's just really depressing.
Yeah. It's a very sad song to listen to. But more importantly, the absence of Signs of Love is just, it hits you. And then when they come back home and it plays Signs of Love again, you just kind of want to sit back and bask in it. I did it. I saved them. We're all okay. It's because Signs of Love is there, and I love that song.
Yeah, and it's just it is because of the sort of the formulaic nature of the game of you're going through these days doing the same basic things. They use the same musical cues over and over and over again, but you're exactly right in that you don't get tired of the songs.
No.
I've fucking played God, like 160 hours, I guess, of like Persona 4 and Persona 4 the Golden, listening to those songs within the context of the game. And I listen to these songs all the time just on my computer on the soundtrack. Like this, I absolutely adore the music in these games, and I think.
Can you even pinpoint what it is that makes them so just they work? They're so omniscient.
Yeah, it's just like I think part of the thing is that like for like the entirety of the soundtracks, I like how it is not like this sort of like single style.
Yeah.
It's got this really impressive breadth of style where it's like sort of one of the things I like to think about, like the sort of describe the music, is that because Persona 3 is also composed by Shoji Meguro, and that's also an absolutely amazing soundtrack. And I like to think of Persona 3's soundtrack as having this like core of blues at like its very center. That is what that music is. And for Persona 4, that's like jazz for me. It's like at the very core of that music, it's jazz.
Yes.
The most interesting thing is that for both games, there's not a single blues song in Persona 3. There's not a single jazz song in Persona 4. Like, none of them are just, that is what that style is. Like, there's a lot of, like, rock songs. There's, like, most of, like, the sort of, like, you know, Signs of Love or Your Affection, the lyrical songs that play are basically J-pop, like, not in a derisive way, but sort of, like, it's pop music, basically.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's something deep in the core of that is just like, it is jazz. And like, that is the core of what this game is a sort of jazz. And the core of what Persona 3 is it is blues, like in a musical sense.
Yeah.
And there's something, like, I have no way of describing it. It's a really weird sensation, but it's something that's really interesting. It's something that I've never seen in any other soundtrack, where you have this completely diverse style of music that somehow at its heart is this style that none of the songs are.
Yeah.
There's no way to explain it, but
it's very tough. So let's take it another direction. What is your favorite song that plays during the game that you just get happy whenever you hear?
That I get happy whenever I hear? I guess I get probably Your Affection. Like ignoring Nevermore. Like Nevermore is my favorite song on the soundtrack.
But you only hear it once. So.
Yeah. So it's like, but like the songs that, and I also really like Specialist. That plays whenever you're like talking to your teachers. Like that's one of the instrumental songs. I really love Specialist.
I really love that too. Specialist is probably my favorite instrumental, although I really love all the sad ones that play during social links. But yeah, my just favorite song to hear is Your Affection. And these games, I think one of the things that makes these songs so good for this game is that they have the beat of all of them is very present, and you're very aware of it, and just sort of the rhythms. They're very rhythm beat based songs to the degree where that kind of helps you. This is a game that has a rhythm to it too, so when you're playing it, it's there. But what I would always wind up doing when Your Affection would come on, and sometimes the Signs of Love, is I would basically be drumming on my Vita to the song, like just with my thumbs.
Yeah, for me, I find it, and I actually had to sort of like dial this down because like, you know, you're here all the time now, and it's like playing on our Vitas, and it's like I constantly sing along with the songs. Like if you were not here, I would be like, it was constant. Like I don't do it like consciously now so that you don't go fucking insane because you hear me singing Your Affection all the time, but it was fucking constant. And it's weird too because, you know, most of the songs have, other than the ending song Nevermore, all the lyrics are English, and other than For Heaven, they're like English, you know. It's like, it is Japanese understanding of English. It's like, it is, most of the lyrics are complete fucking nonsense, make no sense, and it's like, and somehow I'm able to sing along with it, and I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know what the singer is saying. We're probably saying completely different things, and neither of them makes sense. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just something about the songs that's like, it doesn't matter what the lyrics are. Like, what matters is sort of like phonetically how the words sound, like fits with the music. Like, they're very smart that way. But it's like, they're just like really good songs to sing along or hum to while you're playing the game in like a really obsessive way.
So I wanted to ask also, like, what is your favorite dungeon song? And I think the obvious choice here is Heaven, obviously.
Yeah, I don't even really count that.
I don't.
It's the only one that's lyrical. It's like it's the most substantial dungeon song.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's a lot of really good ones. I really like the one that plays in the Adachi one and in the Yomozu Shikume, the Izanami dungeon, with like that like really slow piano music that sort of like slowly builds up, and it sort of like has. Like, one of the things I like about these games is that there's a lot of musical symbol. Like, there's, like, a handful of songs have these, like, core melody that keeps on coming up again.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Brink of Memories is sort of the core of that. That's, like, it ties into Nevermore, the ending song, where that's just, like, where there's a lot of songs like I'll Face Myself, sort of that, like, theme brings up this core melody that comes up across like a lot of these different tracks of music. And I like in Yomochi Shikome that has like this very sort of like sad piano version of that melody that sort of like grows up and then sort of fades out a lot.
Yeah.
I really like that song.
Well, okay, my 3 favorites. I don't know if I can pick 3 favorites, but I love the game one from the dungeon.
Oh, that's a really good one too. I wasn't thinking about that one. Yeah, it
goes like this. What's really great is that I probably shouldn't talk over this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what is so great about that one is that it just gets bigger and bigger. It starts just this little 8-bit, and we didn't even get into the guitar part of it.
Yeah,
That's great.
eventually it gets like this like rockin' guitar riff that starts playing. Yeah, the game one's really good.
Then I really love the one in Naoto's Dungeon, Secret Base.
I like that one too.
Yeah. And I will say, I think Secret Base is probably my favorite if I look at it from all standpoints, because one of the issues with, let's say, like Heaven or the game one is that they're great songs, but the best parts come relatively late in them, so it gets really frustrating.
Yeah, so you want to be sitting there for like 30 seconds and not initiate the next fight because it's like, I want to get to the chorus part of Heaven because I love that song so much.
But the Secret Base song, for me, I love it all the way throughout, and so I don't mind going into the battles, because when I come back out, it starts in a really cool place. And the other one that does that is the Marie Dungeon.
Oh, that one's really good.
That one's fantastic. And that one sort of very much feels like a finale in some ways. Like you've really reached the apex of Marie's story arc, and you also feel like there's some real danger here. Like, that song really has this very powerful emotional punch to it.
Yeah, and one of the things I find really interesting about that, and there's also the song "A Maiden of the Empty" or "A Maiden of the Hollow Forest" is how it should be. Yeah. But like those two songs are very closely tied to Marie. There's something weird because those are songs that obviously they added for Persona 4 The Golden. It's like, but when I listen to them, I feel like they are such Persona 4 songs that I can't. Like, I feel like they were in the original game I played, like, ignoring playing the Golden. Like, there's, even though they don't have, like, any specific musical ties to any of the songs from normal Persona 4 soundtrack, like, this fucking music, like, it is so Persona 4. It's really weird how, like, specifically I feel about those two songs.
So, and I think we can also talk about the battle music here.
Yeah.
And there's sort of, in the original Persona 4, the main battle song was Reach Out to the Truth.
Yeah.
Which is really good. I love that song. Love battling to it. But in Persona 4 The Golden, they added an extra one, which is a really nice choice where you can actually have these two different battle songs depending on the encounter. And so the new main one is Time to Make History. And both of them make fucking great use of guitar.
Yeah, definitely. And I like... Okay, this is like another like my like specific experience with Persona 4 The Golden. Like, I really love the idea of like Time to Make History as a song. Like, it plays when you have a normal fight or enemy advantage, and it's sort of it's like it's a upbeat song, but it's not like this really like rockin' like has this like really driving pace.
Let's play it.
Okay,
couple seconds.
If you can get it to play.
Yeah. So basically, it kind of gets you pumped, but it's
got this like it has a relatively relaxed pace. Like, it's got like that nice like rhythm and beat to it. It's like it's not really stressful, and I like that idea for that for the normal fights. And then whenever you do a mid boss fight or you get player advantage, then it plays "Reach Out to the Truth," the song from Persona 4, which play an example of.
There's arguably a lot more going on there. You could say.
And but it's also got like that. I fucking love that guitar riff that they play like right after the chorus part that starts at the beginning, and you can hear with that song. It is much more like sort of fast paced, like hard hitting. Like, I like the two tones of those songs. Like Reach Out to the Truth. I fucking love that song.
Yeah,
that is probably the millionth time I have heard that song now live on the podcast. But but there's something about like it it's a bit too hardcore and like sort of fast paced for like every single fight, I feel. So I really like the idea of having time to make history to sort of like balance that out. So it's like when Reach Out to the Truth does come on, it's sort of you get the full impact of it being much more hard hitting and much more heavy paced and much more heavy on the guitar. However, as I said before, I developed a tactic very quickly that almost ensured basically 95% of every single one of my battles I got a player advantage, because I would just run past a shadow, it would take them a split second to react to me, I would flick the stick backwards and hit them in the back. So very quickly, I came to realize I almost never hear time to make history over the course of my playing Persona 4 the Golden, because I got player advantage so quickly with that little trick. It was like I was playing normal Persona 4, because like every single fight was Reach Out to the Truth, which was... like, it made me motivated sometimes just not to do that, just so I could hear Time to Make History, because I really like that song, too.
Yeah.
Like, that's how good the music is, and it's like, I want to hear all the songs all the time.
So is there anything else to say about the music in the game at this moment? It's all so good.
Yeah, it's just so fantastic, and it is such a key piece of the experience. It's so sort of just... and it's so different from normal video game soundtracks. You know, the heavy prevalence of having actual lyrical songs in there... it's fantastic.
Well,
I wish more games would put lyrical music in them.
Well, like, this is what I want to say. I think the moment I fell in love with Persona, and I even told you this, because I didn't know they had this kind of thing, was when you get to your first kind of free day in the game that you can just play, and that's when you first hear Heartbeat Heartbreak, and it plays, and I'm like, this is fucking awesome. It's like I'm playing an anime. And that's what really just got me into it, was that I'm listening to this awesome lyrical song, and I think that's when I realized this is a game I'm going to fucking love.
Yeah.
It was definitely music that kind of drew me in, and I think what's so unique to Persona 4 versus most games out there is that I think you form a legitimate, emotional, strong connection to every single song you hear in the game.
Yeah.
I can go through, the soundtrack is pretty long. It's not, unwieldy.
Yeah, it's 2 discs.
Yeah. But anyway, I look through every single one of these. I have an emotional connection to every single fucking one of these songs.
Yeah.
I love them all. But more than just, I like these songs and want to listen to them, it's that I legitimately, I have experiences tied to these songs, and when I hear them, I think of playing the game, and they're very happy memories, because I really love this game.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, there is not a bad song in the soundtrack.
No.
They're all fantastic. And then also, the Persona games have the most phenomenal fucking boss fight music.
Oh yeah,
of any game. It's down the board, every single, because they change it. There's 4 to 5 different boss fight songs in Persona 4. They're all fucking awesome.
They're so great.
My personal favorite one is the one that plays over the first form of Izanami, called The Fog, that just has the most killer fucking guitar solo I've ever fucking heard. It is so great. And I also have this really great experience with that song, because they also, in Japan, they have this touring, every couple of years or so, they put on another live concert of Persona music, and it's they have Shioko Hirata, who's the singer that does all the Persona 4 stuff, Yumi Katamura and Lotus Juice, who are the Persona 3 people who do all the songs for those games. And, they are all on stage. And I was just when I found out about that, I was like, that's really cool. I want to kind of check that out. So I went on YouTube and looked at a few videos of it, and I looked at a video of them playing The Fog. And there's a part when the really kick-ass guitar part comes on. That's they focus on the dude playing the guitar part, was this middle-aged, if you picture a middle-aged Japanese businessman in your head just wearing a white button-up shirt, that dude was on that stage playing the guitar. I was like, who is that guy? And then I very quickly realized that the dude playing the shredding fucking guitar was Shoji Meguro, the dude who composed all the music. And that just made me fall in love with it even more, because it's not only did the dude write the music, the dude can fucking shred. It was awesome.
He just puts so much personality into the game through the music.
It's really cool too, because now you're going through the experience of playing Persona 3. It's really cool to play the other games, because it's not every single soundtrack has their own really distinct vibe to it too. It's not the Persona 3 soundtrack does not sound like the Persona 4 soundtrack at all. But they're both fantastic.
And even for Golden, he came back and composed all this great new music. We touched upon it, but there's even a new sort of day-to-day song you hear, the Snowflakes one, that's really great.
Yeah, that plays during January. That's fantastic.
And I think I want to transition in here, because Snowflake, if you get the Persona 4 Golden soundtrack, which I recommend because it's really cool, you get a remix of the Snowflake song on there too that's even better, because they kind of flesh it out into a full song.
Yeah.
And that's something they do with the recent Persona games, is that they'll, for the whole soundtracks, they'll release these reincarnation albums.
Yeah.
But there's one for Persona 3 and for Persona 4. and it's where basically they take the best songs from those games and make them into real, full, like, studio-recorded songs.
Yeah.
So, I like, one good example here is, like, let's listen to a little bit of Signs of Love from the original game. It goes like this. You hear it all the fucking time. So that's how it goes. But then, when they remix, they're called remixes. They're not remixes.
Yeah.
They're full-on re-recordings with the original artists.
Yeah, but like reworked in like very specific ways. Obviously, when you hear the song.
Yeah. So here's Signs of Love. So you can hear it's the same song, but they've upped the jazz influences a lot.
Yeah, it's like definitely on the Reincarnation album. You can hear that core of the jazz part come out a lot more.
Yeah. So if I would definitely say if you're a Persona 4 fan, you love the music, and you get one soundtrack, get the Nevermore Reincarnation album.
Yeah.
It's really fucking good.
Yeah, it's like that, and the Persona 3 version of it are like two of my favorite albums to listen to right now. They're just really fun albums.
Yeah, and they even put this Reincarnation version of the Nevermore song into the end credits of Persona 4 Golden.
Yeah.
Where they add a lot of clapping.
Yeah, the Nevermore one is kind of interesting because the normal version of that song already sounds like a fully studio-produced song.
Yeah.
It like already has that feel to it, whereas the other ones, they feel like they're good songs, but it's like, you can do more with like the instrumentation.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but when they put the Nevermore, because that's like the best song of the whole game, and it's like what the soundtrack is named after, when they put that on the Reincarnation album, it's like there's nothing really to do with it, so they added some clapping, and then there are also like, there's kind of like some people in a chorus kind of in the background. I find that really funny that it's just like, they kind of have to put that song on there, but they're like, there's just nothing to do with it. And I just seen pictures, Shoji Meguro is like, clapping, damn it. Clapping.
I've got it.
It's the one thing our PS2 technology couldn't handle.
Yeah. So anyway, that kind of covers the music. We really love it, and we really love this whole game, obviously, because we've recorded for about 5 hours now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was anticipating for this podcast.
And we didn't really even scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Okay, we definitely scratched the surface.
Yeah,
we made a good
there's a little scratch, like nail mark on the surface of the Titanic that is Persona 4.
There's so much to talk about with this game. But really, it's just the best way to experience is just to play it. And I love this game. So happy you played it so you could recommend it. And I'm excited to play Persona 3 and eventually 5 when it comes out. And play Persona 4 again. And
Yeah, I'm going through playing Persona 1, moving on to the 2s.
Yeah. And hopefully we can talk about some of these games in the future when I'm done with 3.
I would really like to talk about Persona 3 on the podcast when you finish it, because I think that is also a game, like maybe not necessarily a 5-hour one, but that plot of that game is worth discussion.
Yeah. As I understand it, the story would be a bigger part of that discussion.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, we can hopefully do that, and maybe at that time, if you've played some more Persona 1 or 2, do some recaps on those. So, should be fun. So, I guess that wraps up for now our Persona 4 discussion.
Yeah. For now.
For now.
Expect Persona 4 to come up in some form, through references and whatnot in the future of the podcast. We can't help ourselves.
Yeah, so it's going to be...
Persona is like our new Doctor Who. Like, it will sit alongside our Doctor Who as like something that will somehow come up occasionally on the podcast, even when it's maybe not entirely relevant.
Yeah. So speaking of Doctor Who, that will be coming back in late March. So in about a month here, we will have a more standard topic to talk about, which will be Doctor Who episodes. We'll keep doing, our weekly recaps of those.
Yeah, but obviously alongside like other topics as well.
Yeah. So, but for the rest of the month of March, I think we've got some good topics in mind. Like I said, next week will be kind of an exciting episode because I've got something cool to announce, and I've already actually recorded some portions for that. So, anyway, we will talk to you next week. Hope you enjoyed this Persona podcast. Hope there's someone still listening.
Yeah, I hope you're just playing Persona 4 right now.
Yeah.
Whoever's listening to this.